Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming and/or watching. We will officially bring this meeting to order. And Councilman Kraft, if you please lead us in the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord. Thank you for our blessings here in Oak Island. Thank you for the gift that we get to call Oak Island home. Tonight, as we make decisions on behalf of our friends and neighbors, give us wisdom, open our hearts, open our minds. Let us do the right thing for the town of Oak Island. As always, I ask you to keep us in remembrance of who we are, but most importantly, keep us in remembrance and make us aware of who you are. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Tonight, we have an inordinate number of presentations. So I beg your patience as we move through these. The first, of course, is recognition of a public utilities employee, Mr. Rob Ham.
Madam Mayor, Council, so I get to tell y'all a story. On the date of January 2nd, 2025, Rob was conducting routine maintenance of the sewer collection system. When he arrived at an address of Northeast 31st Street, Rob encountered a complication. He arrived on the scene of a contractor that was clearing a lot of brush, debris, towering pine trees upwards of 60 foot tall. The contractor, Todd, fell a mature pine tree while cutting it. The fully intact pine without warning rolled onto him. Todd was trapped, both legs pinned. His CX-210D excavator was still running. His yells and screams for help were of no use. The sound of the equipment, the exhaust were too loud for anyone to hear. Rob arrived at the address. He saw Todd pinned under this massive pine tree. Todd, in rush, demanded Rob to get into the 48,972-pound excavator and remove the tree from his legs. Rob then acted. Even though having doubt in his abilities, placed himself in the cab of the excavator, Rob was able to use the 32-foot boom length of the excavator, alleviate some pain from Todd. Rob was then instructed by Todd to take the chainsaw that was on the scene and cut the tree. Without hesitation, Rob did as Todd uttered. Therefore, Todd was able to be freed from the mature pine tree. Emergency services were then contacted and Todd was assessed. His leg broken, but his life saved. Based on Rob Ham's outstanding performance and dedication, his supervisor, Jacob Ashley, wholeheartedly recommends recognition of what Rob had done. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce Brent Heath of North Carolina State Fire Marshal's Office and present a Valor Award to Mr. Rob Ham for his going above and beyond his normal duties and saving this gentleman.
This prestigious award is presented in the highest honor of the State Office of the State Fire Marshal in the face of imminent danger to life and property. North Carolina Valor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Rob. Well deserved. The next is a proclamation for Arbor Day. Are you presenting this? Or is the, any members of the EAC?
Ms. Johnson's coming.
There we go. Margaret, I didn't see you, sorry. So, whereas in 1872, J. Merling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and world. And whereas trees in our town increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, beautify our community, and offer numerous environmental benefits, and the wooded nature of Oak Island helps set it apart from other beach towns in North Carolina. And whereas the town of Oak Island has been recognized as a Tree City USA for more than 25 years, whereas the town of Oak Island has continued efforts to plant live oak trees to replace lost canopy, bringing all the benefits these trees provide to more areas in the community, ensuring the town of Oak Island will live on well into the future in more than name only. And whereas the town will celebrate Arbor Day with activities planned for Saturday, April 26th, there will be live oak sapling giveaways, activities, tree plantings in the park, and tree dedication ceremony for the stately oak that anchors the park near the water's edge. Now therefore, I, S. Elizabeth White, Mayor of the town of Oak Island, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2025 as Arbor Day in the town of Oak Island, and urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees, consider planting rain gardens using native trees and plants, and further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to promote the well-being of this and future generations. Proclaim this 8th day of April 2025. Congratulations.
I'm Margaret Johnson, Chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee. I have with me Lee Maxwell, who is the Vice Chair, and Sue Davidson, who heads up our recycling. I'd like to encourage you, please, to attend the Arbor Day celebration. As you know, it is one of the requirements for Tree City. And after COVID, we have gradually been getting back to a spectacular event, and I think this one will be. On the 26th, there will be, of course, the Earth Day celebration at Middleton, but we'll be over at Bill Smith. So please come to Bill Smith, because we're going to be doing a lot of things that honor the Arbor Day mission. And I want to give a rooftop shout out to Bryce and the Stormwater Division for filling up our dance card, giving us things to do, and helping make this within our mission, and helping also the stormwater agenda, but also helping make this Earth Day really something I think we're going to be proud of. And also with the member whose application is before you tonight, we'll be at full membership, which has been a long time coming, so we're so grateful, and we know that's because we've had such great support from management, and I mean staff, council, the manager, and all of the staff involved in things this town is doing to help the environment. So we're so glad to be back in full force.
Excellent, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank you. Next is a presentation by Little Pink Houses. Welcome back.
Thank you. This is my first time here, and I am so excited to be here. I love to see people in the audience and not just talking to a few people at all. I wanted to come and say thank you. I know you probably don't get that enough, but I am here and I'm very excited to share with you about Little Pink Houses of Hope and our retreat that begins here on Oak Island April 27th through May 2nd. This is our 15th year here on Oak Island, and Oak Island was one of the original retreat centers for Little Pink Houses of Hope. But what I want to do is take you on a little trip and tell you a little bit about how Little Pink Houses of Hope started, because as I walked in, there was lots of people who said, "Oh, Little Pink, what are you? What do you do?" And tell you how it began, a little bit of the history, what we do, during the week that we have families here enjoying Oak Island and all of it has to offer, and a little bit about who supports us here on the island, and invite you to attend one of our events. So I'm going to see if I can figure out this little here. So Little Pink Houses of Hope was started by Janine Patton Coble. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2009, and she came to the beach right after being diagnosed with her son, who was about 7 years old, and her family, and she thought the beach was the place to tell them that their lives are going to change, that I have cancer, and that we have to weather this throughout this storm together. And as she was telling her family and enjoying the beach, she had an epiphany that not everyone was as lucky as she is to have access to a vacation when something like this in our life happens. And during her cancer treatments and her recovery period, this grew into the idea of providing free week-long vacations and retreats for breast cancer survivors and their families. Because, you know, if you've ever had somebody who experiences cancer in your family, it doesn't just affect the cancer person, it affects the entire family, all of their caregivers, all of their friends, all of their family, all of their coworkers. And I don't know that there's probably a single person in this audience, and if you are, you can count yourself as 1 in a million that hasn't been affected by some form of cancer. And so what started as a calling for her has turned into a retreat here on our little Oak Island. And like I said, we were one of the original retreats, and we come every year. And when we come, we bring 12 families along with anywhere from 6 to 10 other people who help support those, along with kind of a bevy of volunteers and businesses here on the island that support us throughout that week. So a little bit about Little Pink Houses of Hope. What we want to accomplish during that one small week that we have those families is Survivor Connection. This is an opportunity for people who are experiencing breast cancer and are on that path or are in a very quick recovery time period to connect with other people who have had that experience. We always know that when we walk a path, we never walk alone. And a lot of times we find people along that path that have those same challenges and those same successes. And it creates a bond between those survivors that lasts a lifetime. It also gives them time to focus on their family again. When we are going through treatments, as many of you have probably experienced with your family members, it's all about that person, and it's all about their recovery, and it's all about their treatments, and kind of all of those daily things about what makes a family, like the daily dinners and the outings, those get pushed away. And so this is a time to come back together as families and focus on those relationships and those connections. And finally, it's a time of rejuvenation. I know that as we live here, our beach is our rejuvenation all the time. We get up, we watch that sunrise, or we walk along the beach at that sunset, and we commune with nature, and we thank our Creator every day because we live here someplace where we get to have that kind of an experience. And so we bring our families here, and we want, part of our retreat mantra is happy and hopeful. We want them to leave Oak Island and leave this retreat feeling happy and hopeful for their future. So when they're here, they're building connections, but Little Pink Houses of Hope goes to 21 different locations now across 10 states. While it started here in North Carolina and mostly the North Carolina beaches, it now is throughout Florida, Delaware, Colorado, Nevada, California, San Juan. So we're growing and reaching out. But I can't thank Oak Island Council, mayor, everybody who works here for what they provide, and that's this little slice of heaven that we get to share with families across the nation. We've had families who have never seen a beach before. We have families who have never been to anywhere in North Carolina. They come from Minnesota and Colorado and other places, and so this is just a really unique experience for them. And the town of Oak Island and the businesses and the people who live here, we embrace them with a lot of things to do and a lot of food to eat and a lot of time to share. And that's kind of what I want. You can tell that I'm excited, and I want to get everybody else excited, because when they're here and you see our little pink flags all over the island, because we're having an event somewhere, I want you to stop and say, hey, how are you? Welcome to our little island. Some of our longtime supporters have been the town council. Oak Island Rec Park has been with us since the very, very beginning, providing kayaking and opportunity for our families. Oak Island Accommodations reaches out to their owners, and we get free accommodations for everybody. The restaurants here, you can see a list up here, are so overwhelmingly supportive. And they provide meals, whether it's in their restaurant or some sort of a grab-and-go type situation. It's just overwhelming that I can walk in probably any place on this island and say, I'm with Little Pink, and the next thing they say is, what do you need? And that's because of our unique situation here. So as we go through the week, you'll see us at the rec center. We do a boil. We're going to the aquarium one day. We do stand-up paddleboarding down at the point. We volunteer and cook meals. One is at the Ocean View Methodist Church. One is at First Baptist. There's a picture of a family at Shagger Jack's. And then we do photos along the beach. Every day is an activity and a meal, or an activity and a couple of meals. So it's a pretty busy week, but it's a good week, all in all. In fact, here's the retreat schedule. I left it with you. As I said, we would love to have you come, meet some of our families, attend one of our events, and interact. That's why I'm here. And mostly I'm here to say thank you. I'm here to say thank you for sharing and protecting and giving us the resources of Oak Island, because without it, Little Pink Houses of Hope wouldn't be here to experience. And if you have any questions, I'm gonna leave a few business cards out here. And I just hope that in the future, when you see Little Pink Houses of Hope, you think about how you have contributed to the happiness of over 450 people in the last 15 years who have attended treats here on our little Oak Island. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good work. Next is the status of the land use plan update. Matt?
Good evening, council. It's my pleasure to introduce Greg Feldman with Withers Ravenel. Greg is helping the town update the comprehensive land use plan. And he's here to give council an update on the status as of the 50% draft. So we're at about the halfway point. All this is draft material, so lots of work to do going forward. But Greg will step up here and give us a brief update. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt, and good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Greg Feldman. I'm a project manager with Withers Ravenel. It's my pleasure to be here with you this evening and present an update to you all, a status report, if you will, on the town's update to its comprehensive land use plan, Charting the Course 2045. Moving here to our project schedule slide, this should help orient you all to where we are exactly in the process of this update. As Matt indicated, we are right at that 50% mark, right in between the 50 and 75% mark of this timeline as far as the process of the update is concerned. I won't belabor this schedule here. I recognize that it is difficult to follow along, but it may be found on the project webpage dedicated to this effort. And I do have a zoomed-in timeline of exactly where we are, some key milestones along the way that I'll share on my next slide. But I do want to point out just three things to keep in mind that have been top of mind throughout this update, and that's first and foremost to deliver an effective tool for the town in the form of this comprehensive plan update, and most importantly, a plan that's reflective of where the community sits in terms of its priorities today, and how we can form actionable items to move the town forward in a progressive manner over the next decade or years to come. Number two, you'll see at the bottom of the schedule, I do want to make mention of the concurrent streetscape master plan. for the town's commercial corridors along Oak Island Drive. I will discuss later on in this presentation briefly how the two efforts are intertwined, and certainly able to answer any questions that the council may have of that concurrent effort. And lastly, of course, being a coastal community, the project team is here to ensure that this comprehensive plan is not only one that addresses local concerns that may be outside of the 5 management topics required to be addressed as part of the Coastal Area Management Act and the Coastal Resources Commission review, but we will ensure that all materials as part of this land use plan meet all CAMA required elements. So moving along here, this is a zoomed-in image of some of the key milestones along the way. Let's take a look back to last September, last fall. We had our open house, our big event, all-day community tour, where we actually got to drive and do a field evaluation, get a feel for existing conditions in the community. We met with stakeholders of the community as well as various department heads to learn about different pressure points and priority items for those respective departments. We also met with our project steering committee, which I'll discuss further in this presentation that evening. That was our first meeting then, and then concluded the evening with an open house, a well-attended open house community kickoff event. Moving ahead to last November 6th, we had our second steering committee meeting where we began to discuss the formation of the community survey questions. That survey was actually launched the following day and spanned just about a month. I'm going to talk about a few statistics on my next slide related to that survey and the excellent response rate that we did see, and overall participation volume that we saw as part of that community survey. November 11th was our third steering committee meeting where we revealed some of these survey results and started to begin tying them into our initial conversation on forming this plan's vision and plan goals, which we'll also discuss this evening. At the beginning of this year, we met with the steering committee for our 4th meeting to take a look at our draft goals and vision statement that were guided by results from the community input, not only at the open house, but of course the community survey. Let's take a look back 2 months ago, roughly 2 months ago. That was our next big community open house, very well attended. Over 100 members of the community were at that event, and I know some of you all were as well. That was an opportunity for us to showcase where we were in the formation of this plan's vision statement, which also in turn will guide this plan's goals, which were all met very favorably at that meeting, and again, will be discussed later in this presentation. So fast forward to today, we met with our plan steering committee just yesterday to talk through action items, which are a big component of a comprehensive land use plan. Some of you all may be familiar with the 2017 plan. Action items were in the form of recommendations then. We'll talk a little bit more about the structure of plan goals, objectives, and action items in this presentation. But essentially where we are today, you'll see in this timeline, we're beginning that conversation on plan action items and the discussion on future land use. So just a few statistics here, and again, I won't belabor this slide, but you'll see in green, we had 636 total community survey responses, and those are 636 individuals who took the time to go through the entire community survey, which I think is just an excellent number of total responses. Not captured on this screen, but worth mentioning and noting. Of those 636 responses, we actually had 2,116 write-in responses. A few of our questions asked for individual write-in responses as part of participants in that community survey, so there were 2,116 individual entries, which I think is just an excellent accomplishment. And on the left here, bulleted out, just a few ways we leverage these outlets to promote the survey. So moving along here and starting to talk about the plan's formation, what are some emerging themes that we've gained through discussion, of course, public feedback, and I think you all will be able to see how these 4 bulleted themes have really helped informed this plan's vision statement and also its goals to this point. Starting with walkability and recreation, there's been a heavy emphasis not only through survey responses, but write-in responses at our interactive materials displayed at our community events and open houses. But certainly there's an emphasis on enhancing and prioritizing a strong and interconnected multimodal network in the community. in turn to get people out of vehicles, off of the road, and actually being able to walk around, connecting people to places and so forth. There's been a heavy emphasis on that as a priority as part of this plan update, along with enhancing community appearance. Of course, that's going to be captured to a large degree under the progress made and results from the concurrent streetscape master plan along Oak Island Drive and its commercial corridors. Environmental preservation has certainly been top of mind throughout this comprehensive plan update, so finding ways to address items such as stormwater mitigation, preservation of tree canopy, water quality, and so forth. And also there's been a fourth emerging theme of diversifying and intentionally accommodating a mix of land uses, both new residential and commercial land uses. So I want to keep this here on the screen for you all for just a moment, and this vision statement will also be posted on the project webpage. We'll work with town staff to make sure all of these materials displayed tonight and submitted thus far are on the Charting the Course 2045 webpage on the town's website. But I'd like to take a moment and just read the plan vision statement that has been vetted by the community. The first iteration of this vision statement was probably twice the size, but we were able to condense it and still have the same message carried forward in it. So Oak Island is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for its residents, property owners, business owners, and visitors. We are committed to excellent town services, including maintaining welcoming beaches and attractions, preserving natural resources, improving community appearance and function, and providing comprehensive recreational opportunities. Ensuring long-term fiscal viability by balancing thoughtful residential and commercial growth will provide a sustainable and vibrant future that reflects the shared values and aspirations of our residents, property owners, business owners, and visitors. Jumping ahead now, we're going to begin just a brief overview and discussion of the implementation component of this plan and how it's imagined to function. I think my next slide will really, you'll really be able to reveal a correlation between the vision statement that was just read and where we sit with our current 6 draft plan goals. But I kept this slide in my presentation purposely, and that reason is because part of this update process, we learned some challenges associated with the 2017 land use plan, and one of those was particularly with respect to its implementation component, its plan recommendations. The 2017 plan has roughly 140 individual plan recommendations, and as a tool that's intended to be a guiding document and looked at by the community, appointed and elected officials when it comes to making a decision on a development application or submittal in particular. For example, it's essential for this comprehensive land use plan, this tool, this guiding document, to have a powerful and really easily understandable and navigable implementation component. And so what you're seeing before you on the screen is our approach to this implementation chapter. You'll see we're proposing a tiered structure, starting with an overarching goal. That goal is going to be your more broad yet clear statement that describes the intended long-term outcome or achievement of a specific item, followed by our objectives. These are going to be your more specific and measurable items that contribute to achieving that overarching goal. And lastly, our action items, or what some of you all may be familiar with is referred to as a plan recommendation. These action items are concrete steps, a to-do list, if you will, for the town to look to through implementation of this plan over the next years to come. So this slide here is going to show you all where we are with our 6 draft plan goals that have been presented to the community and received very favorable feedback from the community at the February 12th open house, beginning with enhanced quality of life, improving transportation efficiency, preserve and enhance natural resources, expanding recreation options, enhancing the community appearance, and strategic economic development. All of these goals will, of course, have underlying objectives and action items associated with each of them. And I will reiterate, these goals have been looked at and received favorably by the community thus far, and I'm sure some of you are making the connection between how our vision statement certainly informed the creation of where we are with these 6 plan goals. So lastly, and to wrap up, I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation through the timeline snapshot, where we are today. We're both simultaneously forming plan action items with our steering committee and ultimately with the community at our next public open house, which I will share some next steps with you in just a moment. But running alongside that action item development for this plan, we're constructing the first draft. We have constructed the first draft of the future land use map, which again is a very powerful component, an important component of a comprehensive land use plan, certainly something to look to as a guide in decision-making as appointed and elected officials when a development submittal moves forward. These 6 distinct character areas all have their associated preferred land uses, desired design elements, and development form and pattern associated with them. So just the 2 characteristics shown on the slide here are really the focus, the intent, description of these character areas, and also the desired uses of each of them. I will jump ahead to my next slide, which is the draft future land use map itself. Currently, we have developed an interactive way for the community to respond to this first draft of the future land use map, We're going to roll out this link after some refinements to the community and post it on the project webpage. This QR code ultimately and eventually will take you to an interactive ArcGIS Online story map where you will be able to learn more about each of these 6 character areas and actually navigate this interactive map, zoom in on specific properties, identify what designation it has currently as of this first draft of the future land use map, and actually share feedback with placing a comment dot on this interactive map. So we're very excited to roll that tool out to the community. So to wrap up and to discuss next steps, as I've mentioned, we are in the process now of continuing to refine action items. We've presented our first draft, and those are under staff and steering committee and next public review. Those are our plan recommendations again, and also the same goes for our draft future land use map, which we're excited to roll out to the community and hear thoughts and feedback on. So on our end, leading up until our next big June 11th open house, that's our next, please mark your calendars, that's our next big event. Our team will be assembling and rolling out a complete first, again, I'll reiterate, first draft of this comprehensive land use plan. We've intentionally set up the schedule to accommodate a large window for open review and rolling comment for that draft plan, but that is our goal over the next 2 months, is to assemble a 90%, if you will, draft document so that we have adequate time, a month plus, to field revisions and make those accordingly to that document. So we do have that June 11th community open house that I sure hope everyone watching and here today is able to attend and share their feedback on both plan action items and the future land use map. And lastly, as I mentioned, we will accommodate, this suggests a month, at the bare minimum a month, for open public comment and review of this draft document. And that concludes my update for you all this evening. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, I'm able to answer any questions that council may have from the project team, but thank you so much for your time this evening. It's a pleasure.
Comments or questions?
Just one question, if I could. So I attended the February open house, and I was talking to one of your staff members about the commercial district specifically, and noticed that the renditions that you had didn't have trees. So talked to her at length, and she made a statement, perhaps I misheard, that the state DOT will not allow us to plant trees on East Oak Island Drive.
So
Is that a correct statement?
So I'm glad you brought that up. That referring to the concurrent streetscape master plan effort, that final iteration and draft form of the streetscape master plan has included trees along its entirety of Oak Island Drive. It's our understanding through conversations with staff that a joint maintenance agreement with the Department of Transportation for the segment of Oak Island Drive does exist. And so conversations now are ongoing about the possibility of that joint maintenance agreement being amended to accommodate some maintenance schedule and obligations for the town to ensure that trees are located as part of that effort.
That's great news. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question.
Thank you for formulating such a thoughtful process.
Yes, sir.
It seems as if you've taken public feedback, plugged it into your template, and you're moving forward. One of the areas that you identified for action is transportation. I'm just curious, that's a complex area involving much more than the town, obviously. How do you see that unfolding?
Sure. And under this improved transportation efficiency umbrella, if you will, I'd like to have the focus primarily be looked at as multimodal transportation opportunities, so less of an emphasis on vehicular transportation and more of an emphasis on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, which we are aware the town is soon to undergo an update to its bike master plan, its bike plan. And so the hope would be that this goal, specifically improved transportation efficiency, will largely speak to improving multimodal transportation opportunities, less vehicular transportation oriented. However, there has been conversations to date on taking a look at previous studies related to existing street conditions and so forth. And so there will be some tie-in to actual roadways itself under this goal.
Yeah, and I would suggest that it's a worthy area, but it's an area where there are going to be numerous restrictions because you're dealing with other jurisdictions, agencies,
Absolutely.
right? And you're also dealing with an economic unknown in terms of potential future growth and transportation needs, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely correct.
One last question. The other area that struck me in the vision statement, you talk about thoughtful growth. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. Thoughtful growth, I think, can come in many flavors for the towns. From the town's perspective, I think it's understood that a large portion of the island portion of town does have opportunity for redevelopment, particularly infill. So being just intentional and thoughtful. I'll speak to a management topic required by the Coastal Resources Commission as part of all Coastal Area Management Act land use plans. And that is to address the goal of land use compatibility. And we will certainly keep that in mind through the creation and numerous iterations of the future land use map when proposing specifically any non-residential adjacent to residential development. And if that answers your question, I think that's our approach to this thoughtful growth concept as part of any future development.
Yeah, I mean, in constructing this document, which, as you pointed out, is a foundational document that guides a lot of decision-making, language is important.
Yes, sir.
It conveys intent and value. So we've typically talked about managed growth. Thoughtful growth is yet another way to express that, or is it something entirely different from your perspective?
From my perspective, I wouldn't classify it as an entirely different concept. I think wording is going to certainly be important when it comes to the formation of our action items, something we discussed at length with our steering committee just yesterday afternoon. But I would like to think that intentional growth may be the word to use here, right? There is land left to be developed in the town's jurisdiction. We need to be careful with respect to what properties are currently zoned, what development applications may be submitted on them, and just thinking about the fiscal viability and health of the town moving forward with respect to all of those future decisions, with specifically a development application.
Yeah, I'm particularly supportive of your focus on redevelopment and infill.
Yes, sir.
Because I think that's going to happen. That's going to be the next challenge for our town. I don't want to quibble about manage or thoughtful. I mean, I would argue if you're attempting to manage something, hopefully it's thoughtful.
Absolutely.
Vice versa. Yeah, I like the initial foci that you have. And again, thank you for such a thoughtful process.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We're certainly excited. We understand that there is a lot of work left to do, and we're up for the challenge and very much so looking forward to getting back before the community with a full draft plan assembled in just a couple of months' time. Absolutely.
Mark?
Just two comments. The first one, it looked like on your timeline, your goal is to come back in like the September timeframe. Is that correct?
So we will actually be coming back before the community on June 11th. And that's our next big milestone, we'll call it. That's when we feel we'll be at a comfortable spot to present individual plan chapters, starting with existing conditions, community profile, of course, plan vision and goals and action items and future land use. That's when we feel we'll have those chapters prepared in draft form, based on previous community feedback, but that next big date and milestone as far as public interaction and community involvement goes will be June 11th.
Yeah, I was looking at the line item that says present draft to planning board and council, and it's like August, September.
Right. And the purpose of those two placeholder dates, you'll notice they're not set in stone yet. That's to accommodate a large open review period, both with our steering committee and of course the community. We want to have that plan document uploaded onto the project webpage following revisions that will turn around based on feedback we hear on June 11th and after June 11th. We want to post that plan on the project webpage for at a minimum a month for the community to interact with, share thoughts and comments on before we feel we'll be at a point to present this document in its final draft form to the planning board and ultimately this council in August or September, and that may be subject to slide.
Okay. And Councilmember Bach touched on something that was on my list as well. To his point, words matter. So at one point in the previous slide, you used the word diverse, and then you used the word thoughtful. Sometimes those words may not support each other. So in your opinion, is the word thoughtful supporting diversity in our community, or is the word thoughtful trying to have a more narrow focus on the growth in the community?
Well, in the context of how those two words are integrated into where I believe you're referencing them, I think thoughtful comes into the decision-making process. Diverse comes into the type of submittal that moves forward. I think diverse means we're not focusing on one singular land use moving forward, and that's the end-all be-all. And thoughtful is that we make sure through our decision-making process, we're ensuring we have this diverse land use application and theme of project presented to us. And certainly words matter, to your point. We will continue to be, I will say, very careful through the wording of our action items, as those, again, are intended to be our concrete roadmap action steps, concrete steps to achieve this overarching goal that they're associated with in our land use plan. So we'll continue to wordsmith along the way, and I'm hoping that month window of public comment really reveals any wordsmithing that needs to be done.
Thank you.
To avoid. Yes, sir.
Bob, do you have anything? I want to commend our steering committee
Absolutely.
for their diligent efforts to date, and I want to thank you, Greg, and our staff as well for their effective leadership in this effort. This is a landmark milestone for Oak Island, and I'm really excited about the continued work.
Absolutely.
So very
Yes,
much
ma'am.
appreciated. Thank you,
Us as
Greg.
well. Thank you all so much. And we look forward to seeing you all in just a couple of months.
Just a couple of months, that's right. We had a great meeting yesterday.
Absolutely. Wonderful meeting. All right. Thank you all.
Next is Walker Consultants to tell us about the parking assessment report. Did I miss something?
You missed something.
The rec center.
Rec Center.
I am very sorry. I wrote right over top of it. Needs assessment and facilities evaluation for the rec center. Sorry, Andy.
Thank you for keeping us on our toes. I'm excited to be here tonight. We're going to talk to you a little bit about a feasibility study that we're conducting to look at improved recreation facilities for the town. We've been working on this for a few months. The goal of the study is to kind of look at our existing facilities, really determine what our future and current recreation needs are, and then evaluate our existing facilities for the viability of renovation and/or new construction. We looked at a couple of different sites, and I'm excited to present the experts at this here in just a moment. But I would like to acknowledge and thank the members of that steering committee, all of whom are here tonight, and that is Council Members Cartner and Kraft. We have our recreation experts and community members, Paul Dubé and John Shading. We also have our rec director, Heather O'Brien, along with myself, and our ex officio members, Mayor White and Manager Adams. So thank you all, and it's my privilege to introduce Kristen Hess, along with her firm, HH Architecture. Kristen is founder and managing principal of HH, and I've had the pleasure of knowing Kristen since all that happened 20-some years ago. So welcome, gang. Kristen, I turn it over to you, and the ball is yours.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for hearing us tonight. Again, Kristen Hess, HH Architecture, and joined by Jackson Keel and Jessica Bossier. And I do want to echo the sentiments and the gratitude of the committee. There's a lot of extra work on your part, and we appreciate it. One thing that you should know, and everyone should hear before we launch into schemes and ideas and recommendations and all the things, is we are not in true design yet. This is an assessment. So this is a preliminary phase. We don't have all the answers. Those answers will continue to evolve as we move through the later design phases. But this is a pivotal step in evaluation and assessment. So this is the team that worked on the project, HH Architecture, McGill, Salas O'Brien, and Lynch Mikens, designers and engineers. And what I can tell you as an overview for the process, it started really with, and we're going to go into these steps, but facility assessments. Really taking a look at what you have. All the engineers crawled through and looked at everything and all that good stuff. A programming effort to really look at needs, both current and future needs, relative to the offerings for the town. What we're currently offering, is it sufficient? Should we be offering more or different? And how do we accommodate those needs? A conceptual design, which you'll see tonight, a recommendation there. We did have a public input session that was in tandem with the previous presentation for your both your bike and your comp plan. And then a few benchmarking efforts, just to kind of take the pulse. That'll get more into your operations later, but just to begin to think about who your peers are, what they're charging, that type of thing. We don't have a ton of detail on that tonight, but it will be in our report. So I'll turn it over to Jackson to talk a little bit about the assessment findings.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Kristen. So, as Kristen had gotten us kicked off there, the first step in our design process was to look at the facilities as they are now, to understand, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what it would take to address certain issues that we're hearing from the users and things that we can see as design professionals. And we had all of our engineers come out and, lay their own eyes on it with their own particular lens. So some of the findings that we came up with from that will be, of course, much more detailed in the final report, but we wanted to highlight a few of those here tonight. So we're looking at two sites, the existing recreation center site, which is just up the street here on East Oak Island Drive, and then the community senior center site, which is shares the parcel of Middleton Park with Town Hall. And so we looked at the, from a site perspective, what certain zoning implications were, where the parcels were already divided, what strategies we might need to implement to combine those into being one parcel so that we can put a new facility on those in certain cases. We looked at areas that would be impacted by flood zones, the Middleton Park area being more heavily impacted by flood areas than the rec center site. We looked at protected wetland areas and constrained parking challenges that started to influence how we got to the preferred option that we're going to show to you today, and why we might have steered away from certain other options that we looked at. Skipped ahead there. From an architectural and structural perspective, the existing rec center site we noticed had the load-bearing masonry walls were in good condition there, having many more years of life possibly in them. So that immediately became a candidate for possible reuse in addition to in some of the study options we looked at. We looked at, of course, accessibility concerns for both. A lot of the existing restroom facilities in both are original to the buildings. So certain areas within the buildings themselves would have to be updated to meet certain newer codes. The interior finishes, of course, we looked at, trying to decide what might be worth keeping there, or if, generally we saw pretty extensive wear on a lot of them. A lot of them assumed to be original to the buildings as well. And then just kind of looking at all that holistically from an egress and life safety perspective. So those are, some of the options that we were looking at, between the different design options that we have as a team. MEP-wise, of course, there's a list way longer than this, but, the existing units were evaluated, of course, some of them with the rec center site actually being somewhat newer. So some of those could actually be reused. We were noticing that a lot of them are not providing good ventilation or dehumidification for the space, so some amount of study to recommend supplemental or replacement of those units is definitely valid. Upgrading lighting is something that we would definitely recommend. Noticed also there was issues with plumbing in both facilities that was causing leaks, both with the roof and the plumbing systems themselves. So really all of these are going to be kind of informing, does it make sense to go with some sort of renovation? Is there enough worth saving to make it valuable to the town? Or is it going to be more valuable to go with the new construction? So we looked at that in several different options.
All right. So, hello, I'm Jessica again. We then took a little left turn and decided that we needed to talk with your wonderful staff and understand what the needs of the spaces were going to be. So we started with the community center, which is here on the Middleton Park site, as well as some of the programming that is happening at your current rec center is community center style programming. So we wanted to make sure that we were thinking about all the spaces that were needed, not only for your current needs, but for your future needs. How were you going to program? What was summer camp going to look like? All of those questions, we started asking lots of questions in order to understand the space needs, and then developed a line by line list here, this is very small, we don't expect you to read it, of all the things that we thought that you would need to support your community and the people who are using the spaces. And for the community center spaces, we kind of came up with needing just under 11,000 square feet. So a good amount of space, a lot more than what is here at Middleton Park, which is only about 3,000 square feet. So understanding that there was definitely a deficiency and a need there. With regards to the recreation center, needing a space that focused on a gymnasium was one big requests that was stated, as well as an indoor walking track along with that. Here you can just see a typical sort of gym with a walking track. If those of you haven't seen one before, this is a rendering we did for another project as a precedent. As part of that programming, we wanted to make sure that there was a lot of multi-purpose rooms, things that could be converted, things that could be rented, things that the community could use for parties and art guilds and quilt clubs and all of those things that are happening within your community. We wanted to make sure that there were spaces that were large enough that could really house those groups together and bring them together and hopefully bring new people in on all the events that you guys do here. Okay, so we're gonna go through some design concept options that Jackson's gonna walk you through.
Thanks. So in the initial RFQ that our team responded to and were fortunate enough to be selected, there were kind of 3 initial design concept ideas that were put forward, and we used this as kind of a baseline framework to establish how we would look at, our own conceptual design ideas. One of them being just, remodeling the existing facilities as they were, and bringing new life into those spaces, not necessarily adding to them, but just kind of refreshing them, bringing them up to certain codes, and kind of breathing new life into them. The second one would be a kind of combined facility on one of the sites that could fulfill both options, or both functions, I'm sorry. And the third one being maintaining 2 separate structures to serve as individual rec centers and community centers. And you'll see those kind of reflected in some of the design options we're about to show here. We, as Kristen mentioned, were a small component of one of the public engagement sessions that was done as part of the land use plan earlier in February, and we showed these 4 very high-level blocking options that we had come up with the steering committee early on, that are all some combination of either combined facilities, separate facilities but switching the sites, another combined facility on the other site. So we looked at all the different possibilities that were there, and eventually landed on the option 3 that we had called it at the time, which is to go with a new community center that's on, community and senior center on this Middleton Park site, and in addition and renovation of the existing rec center on the rec center site. Some of the reasons that we kind of eliminated some of these options as we went through the process. Option 1, which was a combined facility on the rec center site up the street. As we got into the actual design of it and looking at what code required amounts of parking would need to happen in order to sustain a facility of that size, we quickly realized that the building would have to expand quite a bit larger than what was initially expected. And then we would have to develop into the, possibly into the protected wetlands. Stormwater strategies would be very expensive. So very quickly, what we thought was going to be kind of a value-focused option where we're reusing that existing facility kind of got quickly eaten up by what we thought would be pretty extensive site costs. So we eventually recommended moving away from this option and focusing on other ones. Option 2, this was a brand new rec center on the Middleton Park site, where we would demolish the existing community senior center space and go back with a brand new facility for a rec center, and then renovate the existing rec center into a community senior center. We eventually moved away from this one because the parking requirements for a rec center are significantly higher than as compared to a community center. And on a pretty constrained site like Middleton Park, where parking is already a challenge, we quickly realized that that was going to possibly snowball into relocating the public utilities, public works buildings off-site to make space for parking. The other downside to this one was that, the kayak launch that is currently kind of connected to the rec center would not have that same proximity anymore, being located on this site. So we decided to focus our efforts more on the option 3, with this one still being one that had some merit, but focusing on one that we thought was a little bit stronger. Option 4 was a brand new combined facility on the Middleton Park site. So as you can see in the rightmost image, that would take up quite a bit of space on the site for some of the same reasons that we found that option 2 wasn't going to be as successful. We knew for certain that this one was going to require the public works, public utilities buildings to move in order to accommodate a facility this large and its parking requirements. So that, of course, would snowball into a very expensive project and would not allow something like this to move forward, at least as quickly. So that was something that we identified as being a little too cost prohibitive for this exercise. So option 3 is kind of the preferred option that we did land on. The advantage to keeping the rec center on its existing site is that there is a lot more opportunity for parking on that site because it's got a lot more open space. There still would be a little bit of, tree cutting that might be required in order to do it, but, certainly not as much as what it would take to accommodate it here. So we were able to get the, code required parking counts that we would need for a facility this size. And then jumping into the floor plan, you can see that at the top of the plan there, the kind of square volume is the existing rec center. Working with the existing building and where its load-bearing walls are located, trying to get the best value out of that existing space. We located, these kind of large program components, your fitness spaces, exercise studios. Certainly all of these would eventually become subdivided into individual rooms, but from a big picture perspective, we wanted to see, does this flow work right? Are all the adjacencies where we want them to be? And this was the plan that we came up with. The addition is to the south there, where the gym is kind of being built out with a small connector there. There'd be a new lobby space where you could go right into the gym or into the existing facility that would be renovated with new finishes and all the things that come with, code requirements. And then above that would be the walking track that we had shown in that rendering earlier. So this would be a two-story volume that would have some height to it, that would give you the kind of regulation clearances you would want in a basketball court, but also providing that amenity of a walking track above. This is a quick kind of visualization of what this preferred option might look like. As you can see, that kind of larger volume behind the single-story existing building up front, kind of giving some new presence to that site. This would be from the East Oak Island Drive as you're driving up past it. And then from kind of the back side of the site where the parking would be located, this is that view of that new lobby with some of the admin spaces and just kind of taking up some of the kind of refreshing the facade of the existing building so that it feels like one cohesive design altogether. Then the other component of this option is, of course, the community center. So we, as you can see by the parking counts required by code, this is significantly less than what a rec center would require. So we were it was much easier to get those 49 spots on this site than it would have been the other way around. Looking at that floor plan, we kind of divided it into the having a dedicated senior center that would be kind of on the left side along with the admin focused area, and then the right side would be kind of more community focused with multi-purpose flex spaces, very kind of simple shape that was then kind of split in the middle by that public lobby space that could lead you out into the park that faces East Oak Island Drive. And again, another kind of quick visualization looking at what that could possibly look like from the parking lot side of Middleton Park. Another component of this exercise is, of course, looking at the cost. How much is all this, going to cost in all these different scenarios we're looking at? We ran through a variety of cost scenarios for both options 2 and 3, and kind of looked at it from what would be required by code minimum, just if we touch anything, we got to update all these things, all the way up to, the full program build out, get everything we want, and, several kind of options in between. The breakdown, we wanted to make sure that we looked at this from a total project cost, and of course, there's a lot of line items in here that are not necessarily, we don't have to go line by line and look at each one of them, but just to make sure that we're not looking at this, from a construction cost standpoint, and then we find out, oh, there's a ton of other things that actually are needed to make a project happen. So we looked at this option 3 from, like I had said, a variety of cost scenarios, combining code minimum upfits of the existing building for the rec center site. We looked at reduced program additions, where we kind of tighten up that footprint and do what's only kind of absolutely necessary, the high priority stuff. A code minimum upfit plus the full program of the addition, full renovation, full program, and kind of what all those different cost figures in kind of a range format would look like. Because there's a variety of things as we get into design that we'll decide, do we want a more economical finish here? Do we want to go with something more premium that might last longer? Same thing with your MEP systems. We'll look at, kind of the longevity of the system and compare it to kind of its upfront cost. So we recognize that there are ranges that we will kind of be looking at this early concept stage. So the committee eventually, we looked at some of what the reduced program and code minimum options would get us, and they really weren't coming out to seem worth it. So as of now, the idea is really to focus on a full renovation with a full program addition, really get what you want, and kind of looking at the community center as more of a future phase, starting with the rec center as being kind of the priority, and moving into the community center at a later date. Yeah, I can handle this. So like we had said, we did provide some imagery for that public input meeting that took place in February. The public responded well to, I think, both options 2 and 3, where we were reusing in some way that existing rec center. I think that they saw that what we were seeing, which is that there's a lot of value there. So we definitely kept that in the option 3 that we eventually moved forward with. I think that this was, of course, kind of earlier in our design study phase, so it hadn't really become apparent how much of the site constraints really made option 2 much more challenging than we had hoped were at that point. So we still felt that the value you're getting out of 3 was still there, and that's, again, kind of what contributed to that one moving forward as the preferred option. It also was apparent that the public would support some form of tax increase for something like this, just because they recognize that there's a need within the community for these spaces. And then that benchmarking exercise that Kristen had mentioned, we are kind of in talks with various other towns, municipalities, counties, kind of asking them to give us information on their facilities, like what do they charge fee rates for their room rentals, what sizes are they offering to their community, what their membership costs are, how well their spaces are utilized, so that can start to inform decision-making down the road in terms of, operational costs, like Kristen had said. And then I'll hand it over to Kristen to finish this off.
Thanks, Jackson. So lastly, we just want to thank you for the opportunity to work with you. It's been a real joy, and we hope we can continue. But what we'll do between now and the end of the month is wrap up the report and turn it in. It'll have all the detail that we've glossed over today. But we wanted to meet with you first and see if there was any comments that we need to capture or any questions that we've left unanswered that then we can tidy up and include in the report. So with that, we'll open it up for questions.
So if I may, just to confirm my understanding of all these numbers that are flying around here. So the option you're recommending, minimum cost would be $25.5 million to $30 million. Does that anticipate and hopefully include some contingency, given what's happening nationally and internationally in terms of material?
Yes.
Is that a high end we can rely on, or is it really going to be 40 million because steel, concrete, and everything else goes up?
Yes, I appreciate your question. We have included an escalation factor. We have included some pretty healthy contingencies in there. It is a very uncertain time. So I do feel that your question is well taken. But I think that we have enough in there right now that we could flex with you on other choices if we needed to keep it in that realm. Yeah.
Okay, you could actually build less and pay the same amount.
Yeah, but you could also be careful about how you build, what you do. And there's still a lot of control because we're not in full design. We haven't made a million decisions. Everything's not engineered to the letter. So I do think there is the potential to keep it under control as we move through.
Okay, let me try another fiscal question from a slightly different approach. So if we were looking at this option, but we wanted to scale back the cost and/or build a much larger contingency, we would have to change the programming. Is that correct? Am I thinking
That
about
is
that correctly?
correct.
Because the programming is what's driving the square footage.
That's correct.
Right, so
That is-
that's another way to go at this, right?
100%.
You don't need all these programs, you get a smaller space, it's less expensive. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's a choice that we could make as well. Okay,
So you also have the choice to look at the program from a kind of what spaces can do double duty. In some regard too, you can kind of build in some efficiencies the way you look at, your program spaces, make them be more flexible so that you can still offer certain things, but only use, half the space for it essentially. So that's another thing that we kind of look for as designers is we're, coming up with things where we look for these efficiencies, we look for opportunities for spaces to overlap or to have good adjacencies for that exact purpose.
yeah, and I appreciated that. I caught that part of your presentation, that in building multiple spaces, you have flexibility, and then the potential, it sounded like, for a revenue stream, presuming that people are going to rent these spaces.
Yep.
Well, yeah, we'd plug a number there. But the bottom line is, if we had fewer spaces and the ones that we had were multiple in terms of their potential options, and we ran less programs, we'd get to a different number. We have to deal with the number here.
Yep.
We have to deal with the number at some point.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Very thoughtful, kind of sets the stage for, can we live with these numbers? What do they really mean? One last question about, not about numbers, but let's just assume we end up with something in this range. What is the prospect of getting an architect, a consultant, from start to finish? How long is this going to take? And are we going to get competitive bids, which we don't always get?
Well, we have been excited to talk up your project in the contracting community.
Okay.
And so we think that there is quite a bit of interest. It's a wonderful project, and I think it will draw a lot of attention. So I'm actually not worried about the competition for your pricing. I think you'll be pleased with that. What I would say in terms of timing is we typically say you should probably allow for about a year for design and permitting and then about a year for construction. It might flex a little one way or the other, but if you go full tilt all in and do everything at one time, you could do it in 2.5 years easy.
So I'll mentally say we're 3 years out at least, right? Minimum, because construction always equals delays and overruns and so on. Given the presentation you heard, the land use plan, are there energy efficiencies structured into this, or will they be structured in?
Oh, yes,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely.
So it'll be an energy-efficient
Absolutely.
building to the extent we can
Absolutely.
build it.
Envelope, water savings, energy savings, all those considerations. Even the way the building is placed on the site. Now, we have the existing building that we'll be working with, probably maybe some new glazing and things like that. But in general, as you begin to think about every decision at the beginning has an impact. And so, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to hear that, by the way.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Terry?
Thank you so much for the presentation. So far, it's been quite a pleasure to work with you all. I just want to say, for the benefit of the public and for my colleagues, the option that the steering committee arrived at was not done so lightly. We understand the cost implications, and we did so under the very watchful eye and in significant discussions with the town manager about the cost and funding and things like that. So we didn't just say we want the most expensive one. We tried to make sure that we knew we could get there if that ended up being the option that we chose.
Thank you for that comment. Bill?
I want to clarify a couple of things. Councilman Bach heard $25 million and $30 million. Councilwoman Carpenter and I were on the steering committee, and when we heard the sticker shock, we all started backtracking and decided we could build the rec center in stage one at somewhere between 13.9 and 16.9, and then come back many years later and address the community center. And the reason being is so much of the community center is used by the county more so than the town of Oak Island. And the county needs to help us finance a community center. So the sticker shock part is a $13.6 million or $16.9 million rec center down on 30th Street. One other thing, and I want to say it tonight, and I'll say it all through our budget meetings. When we went around the room, no one panicked when they saw a tax increase of $50 a year or $100 a year to finance a rec center. But I want to get it out in the open that is just to finance a rec center. When we start talking budgets, we're going to be talking fire department needs, police department needs, payroll needs. And so telling people that there will be a $50 or $100 tax increase is misleading, in my opinion, because there's going to be other stuff not dealing with your all's work. So people need to hear that day one. And hopefully there will be grants, and hopefully there will be other funding to help us, even with the 13.6 and the 16.9. But full circle, 30th Street, I call it 30th Street, I guess that's what it is. In your opinion, top-notch, full coverage is 13.6 to 16.9 today.
That's right.
Yes.
Thank you.
I appreciate you clarifying, because we kind of glossed over the phasing. It gives you flexibility to phase it in as you will. So thank you.
And I want to keep in mind, the community center, when we started this, and Councilwoman Carpenter and I both said it about the same time in one of our steering committee meetings, we're telling the people of Oak Island that we're trying to get a rec center. It's an afterthought to tell the people of Oak Island we're also trying to get a community center. So that's an afterthought at day one. So, but thank you for all your good work. I want to say nice things to you, not harsh things to you.
Well, it's important to get the facts straight.
Yeah.
Bob?
Staying with the funding, if we could, as part of your work scope is helping to explore funding options and providing guidance and suggestions to us with respect to some grants that are out there.
We do
and other
know,
funding
we do know
sources.
of some grants that we can recommend. They're small, but they're there. So I think that you should take every opportunity afforded to you. So
Okay, how about an opportunity to partner with the county? Had we
I
explored
think
that? Is that
that's a
something?
really good idea.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to assist in any way we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more totally unrelated question is about the basketball court. Back in my day, I played a lot of basketball, and now not so much. I can see that basketball court being vacant frequently. Is there an opportunity to use it in a multi-purpose, say for instance, indoor pickleball courts can be set up, and you can charge for people, not just in Oak Island, but outside of the community to come in?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the whole point of every space, is to make it as multifunctional as possible. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we talked about tons of possibilities with the space that large. Could have a large assembly component for, performances, could have, indoor volleyball, pickleball, basketball, of course. really can be functioned in a lot of different ways. Not designing it just to have one function and then sit empty, a lot of the time, like I said.
Now, the other communities that you have on your reference list, have they all recently gone through a rec center or community center?
Not all of them, but they are able to share, what they're charging, what they're seeing. So I would say not all of them have done brand-new facilities like you're talking about. But they're hopefully either of similar size, or they are, like you, they swell in their numbers, in high seasons and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well done. Great job for the steering committee. Tremendous job. Andy, thank you for your leadership for that as well.
Mark?
Oh, we could stay on that chart
Oh,
for my
I'll
first
go right
question.
back.
So what I don't see is what's the full renovation of the current rec center as a standalone estimate? You have, just to get up to code minimum, then you jump right into adding programs for the full renovation, full program. So I can't reverse engineer it from these numbers either. I've been sitting here saying, oh, well, if I subtract here from here, add this back, I'm like, no, these numbers aren't reconciling. So I don't know if you did a full renovation of the current rec center number, and if the committee had a chance to look at that, that would be.
Probably can get it if we have it.
Yeah, that would be
We can
a
figure it
good
out
data
and
point.
include it in the report.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, that would be great. And then let's go to your pie chart.
Okay.
The numbers on your pie chart, I'm assuming that represents counts, that's not a percentage.
Number of.
Right, exactly. So if I add up your numbers quickly, 44 people made a decision on options, 34 people made a decision on how to pay for it. So 10 people walked out of here with no input whatsoever on what they wanted to do. And so it looks like there was a balance on the how do we pay for it between, paying some sort of either user-based fee or tax increase. It's kind of like 50-50 there between two different numbers. But interesting enough, 33 people out of 44 did select option 2, which the committee said no to. So can we go back to option 2 again? I'm trying to remember. You
Yes.
showed 4, and I would try to memorize them.
I know, and we showed them out of order just to confuse
Yeah,
you.
and you did show them out of order.
So what we can say about that is when we did this public meeting, we were very early on. So I'm going to go to 2, right? Yep. So when we showed this option, I don't think we had a full appreciation for the amount of parking that was going to be required for going in this configuration. But the cool thing about 2 and 3 is they afford almost exactly the same amenities, just on flip-flopped sites.
Right.
So we're hopeful that people would understand that upon further study, what we were ending up with is switching the sites made it much more practical and much more the ability to do it quicker, I guess, or in a more efficient way. It just seemed to have more practicality. It alleviates the concerns on this current site with you're already jam-packed and you've got all these other functions that you may or may not want to move right away. You may want to unlock it for the future, but it sort of can't unlock right away, so.
Right, but would be parking available at Site A. So if the community center was where the rec center is today, that basketball court, you can extend parking down there. You had the parking illustration on your on your selected option, right?
go to that?
Which I appreciate, like this
Yeah.
L-shape, right, parking. So you could still pull off your expanded parking there at that site.
There are requirements as to how much remote parking you can have. That could certainly help, as you're saying. I think that probably the reality of what we were facing is that a lot of people are going to say, well, do I have to go park, half a block down the street or half a mile down the street and then walk up here, is that still gonna get the same usability out of that space? Was probably something worth asking for that option. But yeah, there is definitely added capacity there. It's just that it's kind of heavily skewed based on the code requirements as to
Right.
a rec center parking requirement versus a community center
Okay.
required parking.
Okay. I mean, I think my point is, the residents heavily chose option 2. And I'm not saying the steering committee didn't do their homework or didn't do their job, but I'd like to see the numbers for option 2. I mean, I don't know how council feels, but if the residents liked option 2 as the preferred choice, what do those numbers look like?
From a cost perspective?
Yeah.
They're similar.
They're similar.
We did look at those and present those to,
Well, that's what I was hoping you would say. So like a full-blown community center at Site A is $7 million, right? Is that
And they
what
were
you're saying,
done-
the similar numbers, or are you saying the
total
site?
between the two projects was similar.
Yeah, it actually changes, but the site, this current site that we're sitting on, when you look at how to do the parking on this site, it becomes challenging. And my fear is that while the price point to build whatever it is right now is similar, the sort of unintended consequences.
Hidden costs.
Hidden
yeah.
costs on this site would drive this option 2 higher. And I don't have that premium, but I think that after careful consideration and study with new information that happened after the public meeting from the site designer, it just felt more practical to still give everybody all the things that they were asking for. And we do love that this site has the kayak launch associated with recreation. So that is another plus. I don't know if anybody on the committee wants to comment, but we just sort of, it's sort of a timing issue as well.
I would like to comment if you're finished. I don't want to cut your question.
No, I'm done. So I was just curious,
It's a great point.
seeing what the public overwhelmingly chose.
Yeah.
And then it looks like on the map, it could still work, but, what the price tag would be. And they say that roughly you're probably looking at the same budget, whichever way you do it, so.
So here was one of the driving factors away from option 2, and that is the fact that we cannot get the required 160 spaces on the Middleton Park site without totally relocating and demolishing all of Public Works. And in talks with the manager and Andy and these folks from HH, we were, you'll have to help me with this, but we were arriving at a number somewhere around $6 or $7 million higher, Andy says, to relocate Public Works out of their current space and have to do it all at one time and not a perhaps phased approach.
Phased approach.
So that was one of the bigger driving factors behind saying option number 2. And to Jackson's point, you can't put parking spaces at the current rec center for a rec center here. People aren't gonna, they're not gonna go for that, so.
Thank you.
And also of the majority, as Councilman Martin said, like number 2, that was what, 45 votes out of 10,000 residents?
It is a relatively small sample size.
Yeah, I mean, 45 people came that night and voted out of 10,000 residents, so I
It's not a big number,
Yeah.
can't really,
not representative.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess my only other concern would be, 2 years ago, we went down the path of a multi-purpose gymnasium attached to the current rec center, and that was rejected by town council. And I think that budget was only $6 million 2 years ago. So here we are, looking at a gymnasium attached to the current rec center for over $12 million, when we had it 2 years ago for $6 million. I guess that's my only logic I'm trying to reconcile in my mind right now, is, we're kind of back to the drawing board at double the cost, but.
I think, if I may, the what was proposed 2 years ago was basically pen on paper drawing without any of the full details of what a building like that would entail, which is dramatically different from the proposals that H&H have given us, and the thoughtful design options as well as the aesthetics for a revised building that the island residents would be proud of. They're really not, they're an apples and an oranges, they're not an apples and apples.
Well, we paid an architect 2 years ago to design that building, so anyway, okay, let's move on.
Anyone else, council? We're good? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to work with you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
And again, I want to commend the steering committee and the leadership from the staff and H&H for the terrific job that they've done. So last of the presentations is a parking assessment report from Walker Consultants. You introducing this one?
Yes. So we talked a little bit about parking as the part of the last project. We're going to shift our focus entirely to parking, focused primarily on the town-owned and public parking. So Walker Consultants, Leslie Joe, if you'll come on up, was asked to take a look holistically and look specifically at our parking inventory, ways that potentially we can configure, maximize our parking inventory. And so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Leslie Jo Hurwitz with Walker, and she's going to lead you all through this. Leslie Jo.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. We are here to talk about parking and ways that we can, let me see if I can work this. Oops, yikes. Ways to increase your parking count, to improve the parking layouts and making them more uniform, more comfortable for the users, and just more pleasant to park in. And then also to make sure that when we are recommending changes, that we're meeting the recommended ADA requirements for parking throughout your system. So when we were working on the scope for this project, there was a desire to be cost efficient, and so in a reaction to that and to meet that requirement and desire, we decided to not use site visits, and so we used technology since we're able to have that as a tool to use in our toolbox. So we worked with the town staff, and the town provided information on your existing parking count inventory. We used the website parcel database, and then we used satellite imagery through ArcGIS, Google Earth, and a program called CAD Mapper to collect data. And so we have now collected all that data. We have laid out parking for all your locations throughout the town. And we have been wrapping up a reconciliation process with the town because some of that data that we collected was not current or accurate. The town keeps making improvements and changes to their parking. There's construction, so we've reconciled some of that. We have been able to increase your parking count, and the significant changes are in the locations listed there at Oak Island, Barbie Street, 64th Street, the Dolphin Lot, this lot here serving this building, and then several other numbered street lots that we were able to increase. And so significant change was defined as more than 5 spaces. But through that reconciliation of confirmation of the existing town's car count and inventory, and then the information that we found and we could see through the satellite images, we found 2 very large discrepancies. And one was in the East Dolphin Lot, where we restriped the parking lot with 9-foot spaces, all uniform, 90-degree parking, and we came up with 190 spaces that could be placed in that lot. The existing count that the town has right now for that is 78 spaces. So there was a 112 space discrepancy just in what we thought you could provide and what you thought you had. But then when we looked at the Google Maps and we counted the actual spaces, and you see the check marks, there's actually 167 spaces. So if we look at what we think can be provided there with restriping and a new parking layout, and what you currently have at 167, we've actually increased the parking in that parking lot by 23 spaces. The other largest discrepancy and reconciliation we've made is here in this building. We've taken the parking lot and been able to lay out and identify 95 spaces where the inventory that we were given had 26 spaces. So we think there's a net increase of 69 spaces, but actually the new number of parking spaces is 11 because we counted 84 spaces in there right now.
Before you go to your next slide, and I'm
Yep.
sorry to interrupt you, are you saying that the town erroneously counted?
I just think that there's continually changing, and that there was some confirmation that needed to be made with the in-house inventory. Yep.
But it's not additional spaces, let's put a spot here, put a spot there, it's taking the existing spaces and you just counted it and came up with it.
There's a little bit of that, but then we are able to add spaces, yes.
I'm
Correct.
sorry I
Yep.
interrupted you.
No, I have more to show you about that, so.
Would you mind going back to the previous slide about the ball fields? That really, I was trying to understand
Okay.
that.
So,
So we're saying our count shows 78 spaces. You're saying that Google Maps shows is 167 spaces.
that's correct, yes. And so that was what the number, that was just an inventory sheet that we were given, and that listed the number of spaces in that lot at 78. So when we looked at this and we did a quick count, and we came up with the 167, but then on the right, with our new layout, we can fit 190 in there, so.
So did anybody from Walker ever actually come on Oak Island?
We have not, because as we said, our scope did not include that because a desire to reduce costs of our effort.
So this was all done through GIS?
Yes, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so overall parking count, the existing spaces through the inventory we were given is 1,253 spaces. We are recommending layouts that will provide 1,547, so that delta of number of parking spaces is 294, but over 100 of them were just in reconciling the inventory count with the actual that we could count through GIS. Okay, and we have worked with town staff to where they think there's a discrepancy, where we thought there was a discrepancy. We have now reconciled that. So we feel the 1,547 is accurate at this point. Okay. So looking at the parking layouts that we did put together and lay out, there are 8 parking lot locations, and then there are 78 just street parking areas that are much smaller, and everything is limited in space or in dimensions and site constraints. But when we did those layouts, we use a theory called level of service, and it's based on traffic engineering standards. It's a way to qualitatively measure and evaluate the different components of parking. So it's the parking space width, it's the turning radius, it's the slope of the surface that's there. It's all the different components. And when it comes to a parking structure, it's lighting, it's the number of turns to the top and bottom. So it's all components of parking. It's a tool that helps us compare designs, making them consistent. And it's also balancing the user needs with the wants, and then the cost of building it and operating it with the design. And it's just a way to bring it all together and make it more uniform. And so it's based on grades, like in school. A is really good, F is bad. In the traffic engineering world, A would be considered free flow traffic, and F would be gridlock. In the parking world, we look at A being a single maneuver into the parking garage. Into the parking space. It's very comfortable. You're not doing a 3-point turn to get in or out. And then we don't design below level of service D, and the B or C is a good compromise of cost and user comfort. But there are different user types that are more inclined are appropriate for different level of services. So if you have a user that is short-term, high turnover, and unfamiliar with the parking location, they're going to want to be a higher level of service compared to a user that parks in the same space every day. Once a day they come in, once a day they go out. So they're long-term, they're familiar, and they're low turnover. And that would be like a resident or a employee parking versus the level of service, higher level service would be for a retail or visitor type user. So we looked at how do we balance keeping the number of spaces as much as possible, the user types that are there, because you have the frequent, the low turnover residents that are familiar, and then you have infrequent visitors that require a higher level service. And then we have site constraints that we were trying to measure and that we had to work within, and we did not want to lose spaces. So where we ended up was that we provided the higher level of service for the parking stall widths, making it comfortable to get in and out of those spaces, but we went with a lower level service with the narrow drive aisles. And with the site constrictions, as shown on this example here, we left the angled parking, but that created a one-way traffic. People can't back out and go the correct direction. They were backing out onto a main street, which was unsafe. So we redid the layouts to provide a turnaround space. So they back out the correct direction. They go to the end of that parking area. They get turned around. They're driving against the parking angle, but they can see, it's a limited distance. They can see if there's someone coming the other direction, and then they can see to pull out onto the road. So we felt that there was compromise there to provide better, safe parking with better user comfort and overall a more positive parking experience. So we do also make some parking area improvement recommendations, and that is that we want to maintain your walking service free of hazards and variations, and that is required from an accessibility standpoint and by code to be less than 1/4 of an inch. Provide your federal signs for the accessible parking spaces where they are provided, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. Provide the wheel stops. We've included a wheel stop connection detail and description that we would recommend. We've been given just today the standard wheel stop that the city uses, and we'll incorporate that into the report. But wheel stops are a trip hazard, and we just want to make you aware of that. But it's really without an asphalt parking space, it's hard to mark the spaces with just stripes, painting stripes alone. So we want to make sure that they are adhered and they don't get bumped, because if they aren't and they get moved when the car backs into it or pulls into it, it then moves and affects your parking layout and then makes it less efficient, and it doesn't work as well anymore. So I think adhering them correctly is important. And then we've also made the recommendation that vehicles longer than the 17'6" should not be parking in these dead-end parking areas. They can't get to the end and get turned around. So let's talk about accessible parking. So accessible parking is required. It's a law through the Accessible with Disabilities Act and then the Architectural Barriers Act. And it is enforced by the U.S. Access Board. It's not, I apologize, it's not enforced, but it is interpreted, and recommendations are made through the Access Board recommendations, and then they also provide technical guidelines for its implementation. So the number of accessible spaces are determined by that table up there. That's just a snippet from the full table. But each parking lot, the number of spaces in each parking lot determines the number of accessible spaces. So for instance, if there's 82 spaces in a parking lot, you would have to go between 76 to 100, and that requires 4 accessible parking spaces, of which one of them would have to be van accessible. So what we did is we approached the beach as a destination, a single destination with a lot of accessible parking, with parking that's serving it. And the U.S. Access Board allows for if there's more than one parking lot serving one destination, you can move those required accessible parking spaces in each lot to a lot that is more accessible. So by doing that, we were able to take all of the required accessible parking spaces and put them in these listed lots here that have the Moby mats that are more accessible. And so it is a large number. We can't say that there are 1,500 spaces, so you need, if that was the case, you would need 2% for the first 1,000, which is 20, plus another 5, one for each 500, 100 spaces, and need 25 spaces. Well, you need the number of spaces for each lot, and that gets us up to 73 spaces that are required. And so we have provided those in those lots listed. But if you looked, if you remembered on the, I'll back up. If you look here, the recommended number of accessible spaces is 112. And the reason for that is that many of your parking access areas serve more than the beach. So the 63 or the 73 that we have provided for the beach parking are from the lots that are dedicated to beach parking. You have lots that serve tennis courts, baseball fields here that still have to have their own accessible parking. But you can remove them from the ones that only serve the beach and put them in those several identified Moby mat lots. So that's a lot of information. Let's see, what else have we got here? So, concluding, we have been able to improve your parking, make it more comfortable, make it more uniform, and ensure that it meets the accessible parking requirements. And our next steps would be to wrap up any feedback we get tonight, finish our reconciliation and staff conversations that we've got things coordinated. And then I think the staff is looking at identifying some low-hanging fruit items to do some initial improvements for this season. And then they're going to look at putting together a full implementation for any of the items that you choose to implement from our recommendations.
Mark?
This is certainly a lot of information.
I apologize, it is a lot of data.
So I see in your kind of spreadsheet layout, some other places that just kind of jump off the page, like Veterans Park.
Correct. So we were asked to put those, they were on the inventory, and we were asked to include them in the report and to provide layouts for them. So we have.
Okay, but are those places north of Oak Island Drive included in your recommended added parking spaces?
I don't have the list that showed which lots had the additional spaces. It will be included in the report if each lot is listed and it shows if there was an increase of spaces.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just trying to net out. I get that we can change the layout of some of these larger lots and get a few more spaces in there, which would hopefully enable us to add more accessibility spaces by changing the layout of the parking. I just need to make sure I'm seeing it in your data here without including other spaces that are exempt from paid parking.
So I don't think we know about what's exempt from paid parking versus not. We took a layout, we took the location and we laid out parking, and then we compared it to what we were given as what was existing.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
So then I only had one more question. Did you identify the number of parallel parking spaces, or is your proposal eliminating parallel parking spaces?
No, we've provided parallel where we can.
Okay. So in parallel spaces, the idea has come up to allow 2 LSVs to park in a parallel spot.
When you say LSV, is that the golf cart type vehicle?
Right, low-speed vehicle.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. But that's not reflected in your study?
No, it is not. We provided all vehicle size spacing with the idea that we want to maximize your utilization. And so an LSV and a vehicle can both use a vehicle parking space.
Right.
But a vehicle can't use an LSV space. It's too
That's
small. So to maximize your utilization and flexibility, we only show vehicle parking.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the parallel spaces
But parallel
are
spaces are
in this
provided.
packet?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, they are. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my colleague's question pretty much answered my question, but just in your opinion, as a professional, could the town gain existing parking spaces over what you've identified if we labeled some spaces LSV only and they were not 9 feet wide? So,
Not necessarily, no.
okay.
No, because to give up you're going to give up the vehicle spaces to create that, and it's not necessarily a gain.
One of the.
It could depend, so.
Okay, because one of the concerns we hear from residents is lots of folks take their golf carts to the beach, and they feel like they could get multiple carts in what a single vehicle might occupy, and thereby allowing more people to park in that area.
Well, I think that's true. I would encourage if you take an LSV and you park in a parallel, you park at the front so someone could pull in behind you. There would be nothing to say that two couldn't park there. That would just be, I think, something that's systemic and encouraged.
Sure, thank you very much.
I'm going to stay on that line of question if I could. So we have one LSV-only parking lot on the island.
I think we left it that way.
I'm sorry?
I think we left the one lot
So
that way.
And there's 12 LSV spots there.
Okay.
So that's just down the street from my house. At most, you'd be able to get 6 regular-sized spots there. So I am really disappointed that wouldn't have been something you guys would have said, low-hanging fruit. We could take multi-purpose some of the parking lots, and instead of being able to get 8 regular-sized spots, perhaps you can get 16 LSV-only lots.
It was our theory that we wanted to provide the flexibility that both vehicle types could use the one size versus not allowing a vehicle to park in a LSV spot that was smaller that would then go unused. So it was, again, trying to maximize the utilization of the total number of parking spaces. And we still have 14 of the bus, boat, cart spaces there. So I believe we've left that particular lot that you're talking about. But it was our direction to provide vehicle parking. So, yeah.
So during the process, let me just, if I could, lay out the timeline. So we started this process last summer, and the blame's on us. So it took us a while to get going. An RFP, then an RFQ, but you signed the contract on November 21st.
Correct.
Okay. With the stipulation that work would start within 2 weeks and that we would have the analysis back in 4 to 6 weeks. So the end point of that would have been January 31st.
That was the initial plan.
We received this draft, and it's a draft, on April 1. So what happened?
So it was a late start. When we wrote that proposal, we had staff in place, and things changed on our end. We also lost some staff. It was also a much larger undertaking and effort to do those layouts and then to do the data mining that we needed to do to get the information to do the layouts. So it was a bigger effort than we had imagined, and I apologize it took longer, but I am very comfortable and confident with the quality of the work that we did and the information that's been provided.
So with Walker not coming onto the island other than today, is that typical when you
It
go
would
through-
not be, but that was something that as we were agreeing on scope before because we went through a couple iterations and there were some fees involved and we were asked to reduce our fees. So to reduce the fees, we reduced scope, and the way to do that was to limit our site time. And we had these technology tools that should have helped us save time in that regard. So that's how it happened.
So the difference between what the staff count and what Google Maps showed, you determined that early on, that there was a
It
big
took us a
delta.
while to actually work through that because there are so many locations, and to when we saw there was almost a 300 space increase, it didn't make sense to us because in our individual layouts, we were adding a space here, 2 spaces there. We lost a space because we added an accessible space. It took us quite a while to actually work through that and then to go through each location with town staff to make sure that we were correct and then making sure that that if we're counting 167 spaces, but they had 76 on the register, it took a while to reconcile it, so.
So the total amount of increased parking spaces, it's not 300.
No, I think it's actually closer to 100, because almost 190 of them are just the reconciliation of the inventory with what we were counting as actually there.
Because I think, had staff known earlier on that there was a discrepancy, they would have dealt with that sooner. They could have worked with Jim Varner from Otto, and I think that they could have validated this number pretty darn quickly as opposed to waiting. My big concern, we started this problem last summer. So we lost last summer doing any reconfiguration, adding spots. And at this point, we're still in a draft, we're uncertain about the numbers. We may lose this parking season for creating new parking spots.
I think we've been talking with staff, and I think that there are things that they feel they can implement. But yes, there may be some items that are going to wait till next year, yes.
Okay, I think this council was pretty clear when we put the RFQ together that LSV only lots was something that were of keen interest because it would create so many additional parking spots.
Well, I don't think that was conveyed to us, so I apologize.
So there's also there's no compact car spots. There's no extended cab or SUV parking spaces, kind of getting them out. It just seemed that those would be like the low-hanging fruit that y'all would just jump on.
Well, we would not make special spaces unless it was a lot and specifically requested, which it was not, to accommodate extra long trucks or trailers or campers. And so we've provided level of service A, which is high level service A, to accommodate the 85th percentile vehicles. And it is the standard parking space in all the parking layouts.
Okay. Just one last question, if I could. So Barbie Boulevard is one of the most premier streets here in Oak Island. Councilman Kraft lives on it. So your recommendation is to take 31 additional spots and continue to place them in between the trees and the roots of those trees on
They're
Barbie Boulevard.
potential parking spots, yes. And that was our charge, was to maintain as much of your parking that you have and increase where we possibly can. And we have tried to do that with our layouts.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
A bunch of questions. I understand, and we talked about it, no site visits. Did you do a seasonal GIS or CAD or Google Maps study while our parking lots were full? Or did you do it in October, November, December?
We took the data available on the satellite images, and is what we took. And we did have, through a different exercise, we did have someone here over the summer, but that was through a different exercise, and he was doing a separate scope of work.
I was not doing the study for you.
It was not, no, because that was in July. We weren't under contract till November.
These additional spots, has our Public Works Department, have you talked to them to see if they can agree that they can install those additional spots?
That's with Scott, right? Yes.
By redoing angles, are we DOT compliant?
Yes.
Or were we not DOT compliant?
You were inconsistent, the spaces were inconsistent, and they were not the same. And the angles were such that if someone was backing out, they could hit another's car, or they would back into a car on the other side. So we've tried to eliminate those safety issues And we've provided parking that is more consistent and in line with traditional parking geometrics.
But what we had was not illegal.
No,
per
it was
se.
not illegal, no. It just was not consistent.
Okay. I'm confused. I've heard 294 accessible spots, or 73 accessible spot, or 6 per 200.
So, no. It is, if I go back to the requirement by the ADA is per this table, which is not a full, it's just a snippet from the full table. It increases, as shown, until you get to 1,000 spaces. And at 1,000 spaces, it caps at 2%. And you need one additional space for every 100 spaces over that, okay?
So that takes it down to 25 or 30.
Okay, but that is if it's all in one location. The access board and the ADA require that the required accessible spaces on each location, you have to take, if this space here, this location requires 2, this requires 1, this requires 8, you have to add up those numbers, okay? And that's the number that we're providing of the
273.
for the beach access parking, correct.
Okay.
The 112 is required based on including the required spaces serving other destinations.
I came in here hoping to be pizzazzed. By any chance, and I didn't see it in your report, did you address on weekends our town parking lot could be available for paid parking?
Whether it's paid or not was not part of our scope of work. It was only to provide the number of spaces. How it's operated is up to the town.
Did you also not give thought to the ball field right behind us on 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day? I was hoping our expert would come in and say, here's your 500 spots that you all, I'm the expert and you all haven't addressed this.
I think we have addressed what our scope was, which was to provide layouts for each location that would try to increase your parking count, provide consistent and safe parking experiences.
I have two
okay?
specific, I have
It's
two.
not how, it was not how to operate it. It was not how to determine how many paid parking versus resident parking. That was not in our scope for this report.
Okay. I have two specifics. Mr. McDaniel is here. 69th Street. He has asked me numerous times, can we address more parking spots on 69th? I drove over there this past week. Your report says on Southeast 69, there are 6 spots. You want to take it down to 4. I counted 8. Why did I count 8 signs saying parking, 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 but your Google map came up with 6?
Because we were counting, I think we were counting the wheel stops to identify the parking spaces.
So on that, and I've been asked to ask you this, the parking spots are all on the left side of 69th, and the entire right side is empty, waiting for golf carts or anything else to come there. Does that go back to it's hard to pull out, back out?
Yes, you don't want to back into another car that's there, and you have to be able to get turned around. So we were asked to provide the standard parking dimensions to allow maneuvering, so that's what we've done.
I'll say I'm asking this for myself since I live on Barbary Boulevard, but Mr. Brown's here, and this is truly right across the street from his house. Barbary Boulevard, we're increasing. Can you literally just walk me through, if we have to go to that page, and show me where these additional 30 parking spots on Barbary Boulevard are recommended?
I would have to go get my report in my car, but I'm happy to stay after and talk to you about that.
And Mr. Chulo asked that. I think the only place I can come up with is the paid parking, and the yellow bumpers go up to Mike and Jennifer's house on the corner of Live Oak and Barbie, and then it stops. And then there's a big old sign saying no parking in the median when you get to the 300 block. So the only place to put that is what Councilman Chulo said. We went round and round with people
who love the trees saying you are parking on the roots of the trees. And if that's the only place to put additional parking spots, we're going to get beat up. So I'm asking, is that where you, I would love for you to send
Well,
back
I'll have to look
information.
at the plan. There's so many locations, sir, I apologize. I don't know off
Yeah.
the top of my head.
31 more, and it's all up there under the trees. I think I'm thinking, one more question maybe. Boat ramp going from 40 to 70, that's way down on Yacht Drive and 56. And as Councilman Martin said, Veterans Park going from 21 to 19. Did that 14 to 70, did that go into your overall number of here's you some more paid parking
I believe that
spots?
was one of the instances where the inventory of the town was not correct. So there was more spaces there than you realized, and we are just accounting for them now.
Okay.
Okay.
I can accept that. And at the corner of Keziah and Womble and Ocean Drive, your report removes paid parking at Keziah and Ocean Drive, but you increased paid parking at Womble and Ocean Drive. I know you don't know every street
Yeah.
off the top of your head.
Well, no, but we did not do anything in regard to whether it was paid or not. We just located the parking spaces.
Okay, but they're at Womble and Ocean Drive. That lot has just been sold, and a house is going to be built there, so we're not going to be able to park in that. We're going to lose like 25 spots just like that as soon as the bulldozer comes in to build the house. So, but
Okay.
life is tough sometimes. Thank you.
John?
Wow. I think much of what I was going to say has already been covered.
Okay.
But I will say this. I think there's been, unfortunately, a disconnect between the aspirations that we may have had and the scope of work you perceived that you had to do. So, for example, the LSV problem is one that's not going away, and I was disappointed not to see any solutions to that, any creative thinking about that. But I understand that you weren't looking at that. So that remains a problem, and hence you've heard that refrain consistently come up here. The other thing is, I dare say, everybody in this room has had some fun with Google Maps.
It's an easy question.
Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work so well. So your delta, this change that you have, I want staff to verify that. I don't believe these numbers now. I mean, I think they're probably accurate, but I want to confirm it on the ground, right? Where I give you high marks is trying to make all the spaces consistent, to make them uniform, and your attention to safety, creating the turnabouts. I also think, your recommendations on accessibility are something that we need to think about. I will say also that there's a lot of cost implication there about improving roadways and putting up sign and all of that. And so we should understand that if we accept the report and we apply that, we're going to have to change things to come back into compliance, and it's going to cost money. But at least you've laid that out there, so that's helpful.
Accessible,
I,
correct. So we wanted to make sure you had the information to do that.
yeah, I'm familiar with that. But what I'm saying is that part of your report's helpful, because we should be thinking about that, and that would be a major change, and there would be cost, and there'd be a lot of things to be considered. So I want to thank you for fielding the questions. I think, at least
We're
I'll
happy
speak for
to
myself. I
continue-
had expectations that there would be something more creative here. Obviously, that was
Well, I
not the
apologize if we had the wrong direction.
no, that was not the scope of work that you understood it to be. So, and I'll just add one more thing that Councilman Kraft and I have been talking about, creating additional access during the peak 5-6 days of the summer and parking on the field. It's not in your scope of work, but that's something we could consider. The other thing that we need to think about, again, not on your scope, but that's part of the frustration here, is we need to start thinking about a satellite system, because whatever number you pick here, 14, 15, 12, it's never, ever going to be enough, right? So all we can do is alleviate to a certain extent, the problem in season. And again, that wasn't part of your scope of work. That's our work.
And it's not that we can't do or would not do that work. It's, we have the experts to do those things. We have operations
Okay.
people. We can do that. It just was not part of the scope of work.
Thank you for what you did do, or the scope. Thank you for your patience. Appreciate it.
So can you let me know, what would be, if we were to accommodate LSV or subcompact parking, right? So what is the typical width of those spaces versus the 9 feet that you're allowed? What I'm trying to do is, in a particular lot, if there, hypothetically, because I don't know the measurements, but if there were 3 vehicular spaces at 9 feet, could we get 4 LSV and subcompact spaces?
That's possible, yes. I don't know that width off the top of my head, because but I can look that up. But yes, it's not a 1-for-1, and there would be an increase. So I think the question is the loss of the vehicles, if you lose 4, so you're still going to have, if you lose 4 parking spaces and you put in 6 LSV, so you're losing 4 vehicles, and
In our mind, it's a +2,
okay.
right? So just,
So, but at what point would you say, okay, we can't have all LSV, we have to have, if you gave us a number that said, we want X amount of LSV, we want 50 LSV spaces, find them for us and be efficient, that we would be happy to do that. We were not given that instruction. But at what point is the balance that you go to from 100% vehicles that can be parked, or vehicle spaces, 9-foot spaces that can be parked with LSV or vehicles, to 100 space only LSV parking? So where is that balance? I don't know, and that would be something to think about. But those are the 2 extremes. So you have a flexible system, or you have only serving one type of vehicle.
so I think that, I don't want to speak for council, but just in hearing the comments, I believe that was an expectation that we would be able to find. And so somewhere there's a difference between what your scope of work became and what expectations were. But I think that is a plus. And where there is an opportunity for satellite parking, I just want to caution us in that regard. Parking is one method by which we can manage the value of the beach experience. At what point do we cap parking to maintain a positive experience where we're not playing checkers with each other's beach blankets and we're elbow to elbow? I would hate to see that day. So I think we need to be very cautious about when we talk about satellite parking and we see big numbers of parking spaces where we're bringing people to the beach, there's a capacity at which we don't want to go, I don't believe, and we would no longer be a beach of choice if we're competing for space and stepping in other people's space. It would no longer be an enjoyable experience, and I think we really need to figure out what our priorities are there and what we want to do. So that's just my comment to council, but thank you. And Andy, I'm sure we'll have multiple conversations as a result from this, because I do see opportunities without parking on tree roots, et cetera, that where we can build parking capacity, particularly for resident spots and/or visitors who lease carts here. It is a very popular method or mode of transportation to ignore that and to leave it only for the larger vehicles. Yeah, so just having said that, but thank you for your
Thank you
work
for having
and for
me,
your
and we'll
report.
follow up with Andy.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Before we leave this topic, if I could, so Jim, I'm going to put you on the spot if I could, Jim Varner from Otto. So the other towns that you work with, specifically Holden Beach and Ocean Isle Beach, what are they doing for LSVs, for golf carts? Now, we've got more, 10,000 year-round residents. I'll take a stab. We've probably got 1,000 golf carts, way more than any other towns. What have they done creatively for them?
Both options. One is, as Walker presented, having standard space for all the vehicles. And the second is creating, upwards of 50% LSV-only spaces. And for that one, I'm specifically talking about Ocean Isle Beach, which, similar to Oak, has a very high population of people that have golf carts that they use to go to the beach. So that is certainly an option. Out of their 400 spaces, they've got 197 LSV-only spaces.
Say that again, please.
100 spaces, they've got 197, approximately 400. They've got 197 LSV spaces.
So out of 400 spaces,
197.
So only 200 car spaces.
So they've got a little over 200 of spaces that can be used for either a car or an LSV.
And that's in Ocean Isle.
That's Ocean Isle.
Okay, thank you very much.
Holden Beach, everybody lives on the island and they're all within walking distance. So that's a completely different demographic vehicle-wise. The other variable that we see amongst the other islands, knowing the demographics of people that come to our beaches, where do they drive? Very large SUVs and trucks. We've had 2 islands go to 10 to 12 foot wide spaces and 22 feet long spaces in order to accommodate those trucks and to avoid the congestion problem associated with backing and coming and going. And they don't even talk about dualies. So those are worse. But we do have, we've seen 2 islands now go out and change the spacing of their parking and make it bigger to accommodate the vehicles that people drive to the beach, especially during the summer.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Very helpful.
Okay.
No, thank you, Jim. Council, I would like to deal with the agenda adjustment. I understand there's at least 1, if not 2, and then go to public comment. Thank you for those who have signed up to comment, for your patience, for waiting as long as it's taken to get through the presentations. And then I'd like to take a 10-minute break. So, Council, are there adjustments to the agenda that you would like to make?
Yes, I had asked for the item regarding turning streets around Town Hall into one-way to be pulled, so there might be discussion and additional information obtained on that.
That's 1 point.
The number?
1.2.
1.2.
And I have 2 or 3 questions on 1.1 that I would just like to discuss with the town attorney.
So with those adjustments, Council, do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the exceptions made here?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Public comment. I believe we have 4 that have signed up.
Glenn Baker. Yeah. Mr. Spradley intended to speak, but he didn't put his name down, so.
3 minutes, and please watch your time.
Roger that. Good evening, Mayor White and Town Council. Today I want to talk about a growing concern in our community, how the town of Oak Island is spending taxpayer dollars. and the consequences of these decisions may have on the very people who call this town home. Recently, the town allocated $35,000 to resolve a code violations issue, a figure that raises eyebrows when you consider the limited scope of the problem. Add to that a needless parking survey that could have been avoided with basic community input and a growing list of questionable expenditures, and it becomes clear we're facing a troubling pattern of spending without accountability. At first glance, these seem like minor, isolated expenses, but they're not. When we take a step back and look at the big picture, we see that these costs add up quickly. And who foots the bill? The taxpayers. The very people who built this town, raised families here, and plan to retire in peace. Many of them who live on fixed incomes. Let's be honest, when local governments overspend, there's only one way to fill the gap: raising taxes. And while that might not be a burden for the wealthier homeowners or seasonal visitors, it is a devastating prospect for our permanent residents, especially seniors who've budgeted carefully for their retirement. For them, a property tax hike isn't just an inconvenience. It could mean having to sell their home, leaving the community they've been a part of for decades. This isn't just a financial issue, it's a moral one. Town leaders have a responsibility to be stewards of public money, to weigh every expenditure against its true value and impact. When we start spending tens of thousands of dollars on minor legal conflicts and unnecessary studies, we lose sight of that responsibility. We lose sight of the people. Oak Island is a special place. It deserves smart governance, fiscal responsibility, and above all, compassion for its citizens. Let's demand better, let's ask where our money is going and why, and let's make sure the people who made this town what it is aren't the ones forced to leave behind. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Bruce Pitt?
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Bruce Pitt. I live at 2 Augusta Drive. I represent Citizens for Planned Growth, and today I'd like to talk briefly about an article we published today in our newsletter that has to do with providing property tax relief. We all know that the council is going to be and is under tremendous pressure to increase property taxes so as to raise revenue for all the good things that are proposed. And we also know that some of the people on Oak Island have major problems in trying to pay their property taxes because they're on fixed incomes or limited incomes. And any increases in those taxes create severe hardships for them. So we did some research to see the state of property tax relief in North Carolina, and we found that there are 3 provisions already in place in North Carolina, but they're extraordinarily limited. However, the good news is that we found that there have been 6 bills filed at the state legislature to provide improved property tax relief, 4 in the Senate and 2 in the House. All of these bills, they vary somewhat, but they focus on one or two things. One is to put in circuit breakers that show if your property tax bill gets over a certain percent of your income, that relief kicks in. And secondly, or they provide deferment, where you can defer all or part of your property taxes until such time as the house is sold. And many states have implemented provisions like this, and often, in the case of deferral, the state reimburses the town for the delay in the revenue and then collects it once the property is sold. So everybody is made whole in the end. So our interest and our proposal to you is that the town reach out to the other towns in Brunswick County, particularly the beach towns, and get together to petition the legislature to pass one of these bills or a version of them, so that we can get property tax relief for the citizens of Oak Island, who right now, some of them have to leave the island because they can't afford the property taxes. This will also give you an opportunity to help to better deal with the pressures on you to increase property taxes, because it will make the system more progressive than it is today. Thank you very much for your time.
Bruce, if you'd send me the information I'm happy to pose that to our
Okay.
other local
Well,
mayors.
Yeah, I'll send the written document to the clerk, and also be glad to provide you a copy as well.
Thank you very much.
Melanie Morgan.
Good evening. Melanie Morgan, 4808 West Beach Drive. I understand it's now been taken off of the agenda, but I saw that the public records request policy was on the agenda, and I do have some things I'd like to say about that. Back in December, my attorney made a public records request on my behalf, and it was a fairly large one, and asked that files be emailed within a month's time frame. It was over a month when my attorney first heard back from our town attorney. She explained that IT said it was 81,000 documents, and that if we needed the documents to be printed, the town would charge 50 cents per page plus additional fees. Allowing one page per document, that would have amounted to over $40,000 in fees. The general statute allows for charging fees that are reasonable, but they have to be based on the actual cost. $40,000 is not reasonable by any means and is grossly in excess of what the actual cost would be. There would be some cost, but it wouldn't be $40,000. So it was a little shocking with the multiplier to see that. But it was irrelevant in this case because we had requested that the files be emailed. But not everyone can handle the files. Some of the files are of a particular type that are very difficult to open. So you know, how many people would have stopped right there and assumed there was nothing more they could do? Meanwhile, it's been almost 4 months since the request was made, and only a small portion of the records have been received. The general statute says that copies shall be provided as soon as reasonably possible. Is it not reasonable that files can be emailed within 4 months? A few weeks ago, partly because of my frustration with the pace of the first request, I made an additional public records request on my own without going through my attorney. I asked for a much smaller number of records and one question to be answered by the town attorney, and since she's here tonight, I'll go ahead and ask it. How many legal cases does the town currently have against another party? And how many cases are there against the town? The taxpayers deserve to know what legal expenses we are incurring and what risk there is of us having to pay out large settlements and judgments. I'm not asking for specific details because I know you can't give that, but you know, you can give numbers. And I've received nothing on that request. Our public records.
How much more have you got, because your time's
Just a little bit. Our public records policy needs to be spelled out with reasonable fees that are the actual cost and reasonable time limits for satisfying records requests.
Thank you.
Andy Spradley.
Good evening. Andy Spradley, 114 Southeast 6th Street. Good evening, council. Good evening, Mayor. Two things, just two slides tonight for me. The first, Oak Island Beach Preservation would really like to send out our heartfelt thank you for the support everyone has shown for our big annual auction and fundraiser. It was a really big success for us. We couldn't do this without the support of this community, the town, or Oak Island, this council, local communities, and the businesses who helped donate items that we could use for this auction. So funds that we raise help us continue our mission to protect the beaches and support one of our most important things, our educational goals. Speaking of that, we are dedicated to education, and we support this through our annual scholarships. And this year, we are going to be able to provide two $2,000 scholarships. These are available to Brunswick County High School seniors who are preparing to study science and/or education, preferably with an emphasis on ocean, coastal environments, and related systems. This opportunity is open to seniors in both public and private schools throughout Brunswick County. The application deadline is May 2nd, and the recipients will be announced May 21st. Please, if you know a senior who you think this would work for, let them know to get in contact with us. Carolyn Habib is our main person, but you can get a hold of her through our website and our Facebook page. If anyone has a question, I have my card. You can get a hold of me through that site. So thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, let's take a 10-minute break. If you come back as close to 8:40 as you can, we will reconvene at 8:42, whether you're here or not. We are back from break, and we will resume with council reports. Mark, do you want to start?
I'll delay my report till next month. Thank you.
Okay. Terry?
Yeah, I just have one quick thing. I want to say a thank you to town staff, to the vendors, and all the folks who came out to participate in the Spring Fling a couple weeks ago. It was a great crowd, tons of people here, and the town knocked it out of the park, so thank you very much.
Bob?
So want to congratulate the chief on a heart attack, cardiac arrest that took place at pickleball courts. So pickleball can be dangerous to people's health, but they had the AED there. So that's another AED that is on site now. So thank you, staff, for doing that. And a quick public service announcement. For those, if you have not had an opportunity to review the Griffin list, and the Griffin list is a list of 65,000 residents of North Carolina that the Board of Elections does not have your driver's license number or the last four of your social security number. And if you don't respond and update that in the next 15 days, then the vote that you voted for Supreme Court Justice is going to be thrown out. So if your name is on there, by all means, go ahead and make that correction. Except there was a stay. There was a stay. Yes. Okay. Still a good thing to check, but yes, I just read that today. Thank you. Thank you.
Quick, I did go to the Beach Preservation Gala. Wonderful dinner, fun auction, all kinds of good stuff. Next time you hear that advertised, mark it on your calendar, try to go. That's a good fundraiser, but it's a fun time. Baseball starts May 5th. The Loggerheads will be at.
June 5th.
You thought I said May, didn't you?
Yeah.
June 5th. They'll be out at William Smith Park. Go check that out. Earth Day, Arbor Day, Environmental Committee will be at William Smith Park at noon on the 26th. Naming a tree, giving out tree seedlings, answering all types of questions on plants, what have you. Just like Councilwoman Cartner, she and I have been on the Land Use Committee. We've been on the Rec Center Committee. We've been going to a lot of meetings, but it's all good. That's it.
John?
Yes, beach preservation, well done. Another spectacular event. This year the weather cooperated. I just want to note, as a form of appreciation, the through line that goes through all of our work, and that is citizen volunteers on all of these committees, joining with council, giving their time for the benefit of the community. So I want to thank all the people on all those committees, golf, environmental, goes on and on. Finally, we're quite blessed here. We have two extraordinary relatively new leaders in our police and fire department. And interestingly, one appeared in a magazine and the other appeared on TV. So there you go. What other town can claim that kind of distinction?
Thank you.
There he is. He's the poster child. He's on TV. They're everywhere.
That's funny. I just want to say it's been a privilege to work as an ex officio member of both the Consolidated Land Use Plan and the feasibility study for the rec center, along with staff and my colleagues on council. The meetings are very productive and effective, and I really look forward to the prospects of all that these meetings will produce and as laid out in the final reports. I also received a request from Alan McWhirter, the Exalted Ruler of the Elks, asking the town to do a proclamation for Youth Week in May. That's May 1st through 7th. They'll have an award ceremony on May 6th for the recipients of their scholarships. It's a public meeting. But I wanted to mention that simply because council won't meet until May 13th. So it will be in our rearview mirror by then. But that's May 1st through 7th. It's Youth Week. And the May 6th is the celebration for Youth Week at 6 p.m. At the Elks. And that's all I have for this evening. So I need a motion, please, council, for the consent agenda as it stands with the removal for 1.1 and 1.2 for discussion.
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. 1.1, is that you, Bill?
That's me. If I may ask, Madam Attorney, we struck the language on page 5. A public record means all records created or received in the course of business in whatever format. And then we put down, as you told me, you got the language out of the statute. But by putting that language in, we leave out in whatever format. I would just like to add somewhere in that language, text messages, if you would be so kind.
Well, if you would like me to do that, we can. I will say that there is case law that makes clear that emails, text messages, instant messages, tweets, social media, all of that is covered. So there is case law out there to kind of cover it, that it's already subsumed in this official definition.
If you're comfortable, I'm comfortable. I just don't, if somebody were to come up and say, how much did the town pay for a fire truck? They should get that answer in 24 or 48 hours in a timely manner. But if we didn't want to give that answer, and they say, well, you texted over to the fire chief and told him, well, I don't have to give you the text message because we've got different language in it. But if you say it's covered, it's covered.
It is covered, sir.
Okay. I'm fine.
Good.
I'm good.
Bob, 1.2, or is it Terry? I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to confirm with Councilmember Kraft, the new language does say, and this is, I guess, I'm just asking for clarification when you say there's case law that covers everything. It says, or other documentary material, regardless of physical form or characteristic, made or received pursuant to law or ordinance in connection with transaction of public business by any agency, blah, blah, blah. So you're saying that's a very blanket, probably sentence that covers any form of material that a public records may include.
Exactly. Yeah, kind of coming from the case I'm looking at, the definition is very broad. It's really unlimited in the form of the material in question or by the circumstances under which it was created.
Yep,
And
okay.
it does definitely include all these modern forms of communication that we have.
And then, so now to my question that I had, and I don't know if it's a printer issue or I'm certainly not assuming it was a typing issue, and I don't know if it appears on other members' packets, but it says electronic data, and then I'm showing a special character there.
Yeah, that should be a dash.
That's a dash, okay, that makes sense now, okay. But that term, electronic data processing records, that's somewhat dated, but that's what the state wants in there, is that?
It is dated, and so that's not specifically what the court looked at to subsume all these other new forms, but very definitely there is a case it's actually out of 2010, recognizing emails are subject to public records law, and this includes other electronic communications.
So that electronic data processing record, would that imply that people could request like our accounts payable records?
Well, of course, there are all kinds of exceptions to public records laws where we have to redact. That's what takes so long with public records requests, is going through and redacting what we can't turn over.
Okay, because that term was a little scary, because like I said, it's dated, and it seems very general on what could be considered electronic data processing record.
Right. Well, I thought it was safest to include the exact definition of public record from the statute.
Yeah.
And knowing that there are exceptions, that's one of the reasons these requests take so long, is there's a lot of personal data that you have to go through and kind of pull out, even out of electronic data processing records.
Right, okay, all right. Thank you.
Lydia, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, if I could, with respect to the discussion that Ms. Morgan brought up. So 81,000 emails. Could you just take a minute or two and clarify for the audience here present and listening in what that process looks like and why it takes so long?
Sure, yeah. And so our records belong to the public, and the public can request these records, and just depending on the breadth of the record, it can take time to go through those, particularly when we want to go through and redact, take out sensitive information, take out customers' information, take out attorney-client records. It takes a while, and I imagine our clerk can also maybe speak to this as well, but it takes a while to go through broad requests, say, of all emails to Mayor Smith from January to November. I mean, that in and of itself could be 50,000 emails when you count in every single email and all the replies and everything. So it takes a while to go through all of that. The statute doesn't allow, that's one reason we wanted to try to pass a policy to come up with reasonable forms of reimbursement for the cost, but there's really no way to recoup the cost of what it takes for the clerk and myself to kind of go through and make sure the public records request is being fulfilled. It takes a while, and the time-consuming part of it is going through and doing what we call that redaction. Right. Now, you can certainly narrow your scope, by search terms and so forth, but still, you feel you want to be careful about everything you turn over and make sure there's nothing in there that should properly be withheld.
Now, you've attempted to get the scope narrowed, but you've not been successful in getting opposing
Well,
parties
and it's,
to
you
narrow
can
the scope.
ask for a scope to be narrowed, but the records are the product of the people, and they can ask for them. It's just, I know that we've been attacking those, some public records requests we've had, one batch at a time. And it's taken a little while, but it's certainly being done in good faith.
Thank you. And kudos to our town clerk.
Thank you.
So while we're on the subject, which is a little bit off track, but so the question of timely and reasonable, what is the legal standard? Is there one, or is that just to be interpreted?
There's not one.
Yeah, I was
there's
afraid
not
of
one.
that.
But we have truly tried to make a good faith effort, given our resources, given demands on our time, given this responsibility of redaction. And quite frankly, for example, folks don't really ask for paper copies anymore. I can certainly make sure we have a sensible amount if people ask for paper copies. People ask for mostly ask for electronic records. And so that takes even longer, honestly, sometimes than redacting paper copies.
So what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the reasonableness standard is applicable case by case, largely dependent on the scope and the complexity of the request. Would that be a fair summation?
Right, and I would say, and also the resources of the local government that's responding to the request.
Okay, so it would be, if I've requested all the correspondence to and from citizen, official X, it could be a voluminous set of things, and so reasonableness there would be governed in part by the scope as well as what you have to do in terms of review.
Yes, I mean, requests that involve any of you all, just given the level of kind of email exchange that you receive, those by their nature are onerous, as opposed to a much more specific, narrow request about, something else.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We good? Harry?
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry. I think we'll need a motion to approve this as amended.
Thank you, that's where I was going.
There you go.
So we did the consent agenda.
No,
No.
we removed it.
Need a motion to approve it.
Items removed from the,
So, Madam Mayor, I would make a motion to approve this policy as amended by our town attorney.
Second.
thank you. Now I follow you. All in favor? Thank you.
Just for clarification, the amendment was just the hyphen instead of a square block, is that correct? We didn't change any text, we just,
Well, other than what was reflected in the red.
yeah.
The next one is 1.2. Request that, Terry?
I did request that. I had a question. I talked to Matt earlier. I talked to the manager. I understand the reasoning behind wanting to do this. My concern is, I think fixing one thing creates another potential safety issue for folks who are coming to town hall, and I just wanted to see if we could get some clarification on that.
Yeah, and Charlie's coming up here, police chief will address this. I also have a slide for you, just as we were looking ourselves, an ongoing effort to create additional parking spots, particularly near pickleball courts and at the very congested area that is now right around the police station and the community center as well. Here's the slide, Chief.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor, Council. We started taking a look at this parking issue, or I guess it was back in December when we needed some additional town staff parking. So just a little background on this. There is, during season, behind Town Hall is heavily congested. We have cars traveling in both directions, coming off of East Oak Island Drive down 46th and 48th Street, then turning in behind Town Hall, then coming into the corner parking lot there at Public Works. So it gets incredibly congested back there. Second of all, if you turn off of East Oak Island Drive onto 48th Street, there on the left beside the park, there's an opportunity there for some parking. So the, excuse me, the issue there is when people drive the large trucks, the big SUVs, those vehicles they hang out onto 48th Street there, and if cars try to pass both ways and those cars are parked there, that's problematic. Importantly, the seniors at the community center have requested on numerous times that they have additional handicap parking around the community center that would give them much easier access to the community center. So we were taking a look at as a whole and around the complex what we could do. And when we came up, we've got a parking plan, around there. But one of those things is if we do make it a one-way, is the safety factor, is just it being more safe, for the entrance and exiting, Town Hall. So that was the basis, the background and the basis of how that decision was derived.
And I'm good with you through everything you've said. My concern is that anyone traveling from the south, from the beach, up, I'll get my street right, up 46th.
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
if they want to go into the parking lot between Town Hall and the pickleball courts,
Right.
they'll now have to go up to Oak Island Drive,
Correct.
exit onto Oak Island Drive, go a few hundred feet, and then come back in. And I think in the summertime, that's just a nightmare. That's my concern, is that it adds an additional safety complication by making folks go around the block just to get into the parking lot.
And, that's a valid point, to bring up. I think that looking at it as a whole, I'm not sure of the number of traffic, but that certainly would be a concern. It's something we could take a look at later on in the summer if need be.
But what you just said earlier was, it's congested when people are trying to go both directions.
That's correct.
Right here behind Town Hall, so.
Right.
There's a trade-off of convenience.
It is. It's a trade-off. And we have a few accidents, during the season, in the parking lots with our seniors. Our mailbox is there, Public Works in the actual parking area, and we'll have some folks to run into it periodically. So I think in an effort to simplify, make it more efficient, make it more safe, that was the recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So 47th Street, I can definitely see one way and a lot of safety. I went that way tonight coming here and slammed on my brakes when a young man came running down the stairs from the playground. And so I could see, and I was doing about 8, so it was not a problem. But the 46th is a very heavily trafficked road.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a concern if we make that one way going north.
No, just 47.
Just this one.
Yeah, you just want.
Oh.
Both ways.
You just want
Oh.
people to turn into Town Hall.
Okay. I
Yeah.
apologize. I missed that. Okay.
Never mind.
Never
Main
mind.
Street.
I'm good.
Yeah, the only redeeming aspect is you're making 2 rights.
Understand. Okay.
To be able to do that, as difficult as it
Yeah,
is.
in the summertime, it's nearly
very.
impossible.
So council, what's your pleasure?
Well, just a point of clarification, people will understand that those parking lots below Town Hall are bi-directional. Like your arrow doesn't imply that once I get into the parking lot at the community center, I can't exit. I will be allowed to exit. I just have to turn left and go behind Town Hall. So there'll be new signage that says, do not enter, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right.
So in your illustration, that community van that's parked there is actually now illegally parked.
Correct.
Because it's facing the wrong
That's
direction.
right. We'll have a designated
Yep,
spot for
you'll
it.
have to, yep, all that will have to get fixed.
Yep. And that's and that's really the parking that we're after for the community center for the seniors to park.
Okay.
I can make a motion to approve the recommendation of making 47th Street one way.
Is there a second?
Second, I think if it proves to be burdensome, we'll change it, but let's try it. So, second.
All in favor? 4, and all opposed? 1 opposed. Thank you, Chief. Committee appointments. The Environmental Advisory Committee, Advisory Board has 2 terms, one ending June 2025 and one ending June 2026. I believe there's really only one candidate, so I'm not able to reconcile that with.
Ending in 26.
Just one term, yes.
Yeah.
One term.
Okay, I see okay, I get it.
That's a leftover, yeah.
Okay. The candidate is Suzanne Brown. 8,
And yes, that's 5 votes for Suzanne Brown.
excellent. Congratulations, Suzanne. She's a real crackerjack, so she'll be a great addition. Administrative reports. Catherine, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Waiting for my slides to pull up here.
Slides of Spain and Portugal.
And I have to find that clicker. You can see from the presentations tonight that a lot of work's been going on. We just have a tremendous staff, and I think we're all going at full speed right now. But quick updates. Capital projects. First of all, there is on the website the active projects and completed projects section. The public can now go onto our website and continuously monitor the status of these projects. Thanks to our new assistant town manager who's been spearheading the capital projects section. We're very grateful that that's going to be updated and kept up regularly. And there's also an interactive map to see where these projects are. This is a very...
On that, where it said street paving, does that give a list of what streets are coming up? By any chance?
We can put it there, for sure, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
A very busy slide, but again, I'm just emphasizing how many projects we have going on right now in the town, all in various forms of process and completion. You've heard of the major ones tonight, parking study, the rec center. We've done the additional Moby mats that had to go through CAMA, the fire hydrants, the police backup generator. Our town hall customer service improvement area is complete. The bike plan is kicking off. Our dune infiltration system, second phase, has just completed its bidding process, and we'll be bringing a contract to you on that shortly. The pickleball lighting, still a little bit in process there, but almost complete. There'll be plenty of time for our upcoming tournament there. New town hall electronic sign has been ordered. We'll definitely have that in the next couple of months. And the street paving is resuming.
While you're on that previous slide, do we have an update on the electronic sign in front of the rec center?
No, and Heather just left. I know that's in process. They've been working on it. She told me it was not too long, but I don't know if that has been completed or not, do you? They're working on it, and I do know that it's any day now.
Thank you.
Most importantly, and I've highlighted the two I want to focus on, but I continue to try to keep you all updated on the massive beach nourishment project, which is really 5, as we discussed last month. But we just got word, we've been working with the Corps, and again, they have been wonderful for this community. It's been a pleasure to work with them. But they have increased our Lockwood Folly sand. I know there was 65,000 cubic yards was of concern. They worked with us on the placement, and now they have worked with us on additional cubic yards, 40,000 additional cubic yards, they're estimating.
And that started this
Great
past
news.
week.
It did, it has begun.
That's awesome.
Great news. The Wilmington Harbor, the East End project, they had to rebid that as well, and it does look like they'll be able to proceed. They have sent us the official request for us to exercise the 2 options that we contracted with back in September. As we discussed with them, taking 300 cubic yards sections, 300,000 in section 1 and 300,000 in section 2. And if we opt to exercise both of those options, it will now cost us $6.6 million. Back in September, we are estimating $6 million, so it is quite a bit over budget. It is still the cheapest sand we can get, though.
Absolutely.
So it's cheaper than the Osaki project, which is the very next one. Highlighted again for great news, that BOEM lease is final. It is official, and we're in process of beginning the rebid on that. It will be going out April 15th, and bid opening will be here on May 12th. And finally, the study project, the Corps of Engineers Federal Beach Study Project continues. I literally cut and pasted that last paragraph because that is their specific verbiage if you want to know exactly where they are. But again, they're doing a great job of keeping us updated on their process on that. And just for a visual, That's the west end and the east end beach nourishment projects. Both looks like they're moving forward.
On the west end, they started it at 67th Street?
Yes. And they will cover all of the high vulnerability areas with the sandbags.
The people on 68 or 69th Street, what will the answer be when they ask, when do they get sand?
They'll be getting sand as soon as the rest of the beach gets sand on with the Osaki project.
The Osaki project, all right.
Other projects and initiatives we have going on, of course, this is budget season. We've been hard at work on that with the upcoming public hearing in May and hopeful adoption of the budget in June. The land use plan update, of course, you heard that presentation today. That's been going very well. And the Parks and Rec Master Plan survey is still online, is open, and it will close May 14th. So encourage everyone to participate in that. Continuous code enforcement updates for you. Here's where we are as of right now. As of about the end of March, we're about halfway through all the list, the high, medium, and the low. 564 cases. Matt in Development Services, his staff has been doing a great job plugging through all of these. And for the department highlights, Chief? Guys, we want to take a moment to recognize yet another wonderful staff member we have. You all saw Mr. Hand's recognition earlier for his wonderful efforts, and we want to take a moment to recognize Chief Sillings.
Hey again. All right, so on February 17th, we were called to assist one of our partnering agencies at Sunset Harbor, Zion Hill, with a residential structure fire. Chief Sillings just happens to live across the street from the area that was. He was first on the scene and arrived to a house that had well involved in fire with a lady trapped upstairs. They were on the phone with 911 with her. They talked to her through the entire event. He was the first one there, established command, started directing the crews, telling everyone where to go, what to do. The guys went in from Sunset Harbor, pulled her out, passed them along to Chief Sillings. He passed her along to EMS. They life flighted her to Chapel Hill. And we saw a text on Facebook the other day from her to the chief there that she is doing well and recovering. We attended their board meeting plus awards banquet on March 29th where they recognized Chief Sillings for a award of, I had it right here, a Medal of Merit, and recognized his participation in leading the scene that night with the incident command as well as passing off helping pass off the patients. So wanted to make sure y'all knew about that and recognize him. Everyone's doing just a great job, and so, Chief, thank you.
Great job, Deputy Chief Sillings. Thank you.
Amazing. Last slide, just updates on all the special events. Rec Center, or the Recreation Department is just doing an amazing job getting ready for the big season ahead, but the Easter egg hunt, the Earth Day, Arbor Day, Seafood Festival coming up, and of course the fun softball game with badges, boats, and boots. That's it. I'll continue to end the slide on OKI information. People say they don't know how to find information. We have gone overboard with as many ways as we can possibly offer to have citizens connect with us in the most convenient way for them. It's also printed on their utility bills. That's all I have.
Thank you, Gretchen. Great job. Are there any other reports?
I just wanted to follow up a little on the code cases. You know, as Matt works through them, then he kind of forwards them to us, and we're in the process of, you know, catching up, still continuing to catch up on a lot of those old ones. We have filed now there are 3 cases that are filed. There are at least 16 different properties that we have sent one notice to or 2 notices to. I think we have 4 or 5 properties that if we don't hear from them by the end of the month, we'll be looking at those to see which ones will go forward with filing. But we're continuing to plug ahead with those.
I know that, that Matt's not here, but Catherine, at what point or at what points do violators get assessed fines?
Let's see if, Mike, can you help me go back on the administrative report? There's a slide that helps detail that. The code enforcement slide.
It's not a daily assessment until they are.
No. So that's the process. They have
Okay.
10 days, another 10 days, another 10 days, and then the second citation notice, then it goes to the attorney. So there's a great deal of time where we try to get voluntary compliance first.
Right, right.
Fines.
So I know that some communities in discussing are less lenient on the fines in order to cover court costs. Is that something we might be considering?
Increasing the cost of the
Either
fines?
the cost or the, how often they're fined throughout the process. So maybe not being as generous so that we can end up closer to neutral in terms of court costs than, it's a curiosity. If that's something,
It's something we can look into.
yeah, we're considering, we can talk later.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We have no old business, new business. Consideration of a resolution opposing HB 338. Catherine, do you want to explain what's happening with Oakwood Glen? Or is that?
Yes, so de-annexation bill was filed, House Bill 338. Sorry, I pulled it up very quickly. And we certainly have spoken out about this in this resolution. I think just in general, it is difficult for towns to operate and plan for their future with the uncertainty of de-annexation without understanding what those criteria might be, why those circumstances might necessitate a de-annexation. And so for all of those reasons, I think we join in many other municipalities in opposing that process.
Do we know why the citizens of Oakwood Glen, what's their complaint? Why they're asking for de-annexation? Is that?
I certainly don't want to speak for all of them. We have spoken to some of them, and I know some of the concerns have been the water and sewer, of which the town of Oak Island does not control. So in this particular case of these 11, I don't know if that was the factor or not. It is a neighborhood that has both in-town residents and not, contiguous, right beside each other. So it's perhaps that they feel some are getting, not having to pay taxes and some are paying more in taxes. But on these 11, I do not know the direct reason.
And thank you for that. Council, I have asked our attorney to look into whether or not we're able to charge county residents for services that we would provide, be it stormwater or any other non-emergency because our mutual aid agreement would kick in for fire and police emergencies, but there might be other situations that would require a response from fire or police that is not of an emergency nature. There could be public works, there could be other things that, what I would hate for us to end up in is a situation where someone just doesn't want to pay their town taxes and continue to receive services, which is happening in Oakwood Glen. And I think that would put us in a very difficult position, you know, and what's happening with HB 338 is it's creating donut holes in communities. I mean, how do you stop and start sidewalks? Do you stop and start street paving? I mean, it's just not, even stormwater, you're clearing off, stormwater drainage trenches. Do you not do that property and the rest of your system is at risk? So it's really a challenge, and one that I know Catherine and I both have spoken to Representative Miller about. If because I can't do something in part of my property, I make an appeal to Representative Miller that I don't want to have to pay my taxes because I don't like the rules. It's just a really challenging situation for all of our communities. And, the next is where does all this stop, right? Because there are no criteria, it's all subjective. And these are proposed as local bills, and the General Assembly is very generous in passing local bills. But it's something that all of our communities are wrestling with. It's not just Oak Island.
So should the de-annexation go through, Catherine, we'd have to, we'll update our town records, right, to show they're no longer town residents, so they don't get discounted entry into any of our activities. We'll have to notify Otto that if they've already got a resident pass, and they'll have to come back and charge them the difference for a non-resident pass.
Correct.
Have we talked to Representative Miller to ask what his reasoning, what his justification, thought process is?
We both have.
Are you not happy with the response?
I think I don't want to speak for him, but it's a difficult situation that exists in that neighborhood. It's very unique. I don't think that it's indicative of other areas, particularly in our town. Just that neighborhood alone is very unique.
Was it 2009 when there were, I may not have the year right, but where citizens, by signing a document, they could choose whether they wanted to become part of the town, and others didn't.
That's right.
But we're being held accountable. So it is literally household by household, whoever signed on to become part of the town. So a difficult decision that we're having to now deal with. But especially if the complaint is about water and sewer, that the county provides the water and there's a special sewer district that controls the sewer. So we're being held accountable for issues we cannot address.
And I did mention that as well to Representative Miller, that we were working with the Brunswick Sanitary District. I've personally met with them and asked for their assistance, that we had a mutual problem to solve here. We have citizens that may want water and sewer, and how the town could work with the sanitary district to provide that service to them. And they're in some studies themselves about their capacity and concerns for their capacity. But we will continue to pursue that regardless of what goes on, because those residents deserve to have that opportunity if they so choose to.
So Catherine, have we spoken to the county, and does the county have expressed any interest in taking over the sewer, the sanitary district?
Yes, we have had those conversations, those initial conversations.
I know it's a private board and.
Yes, I think the county is receptive to the same thing. We're all trying to solve the problem for the citizens.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions, Council?
Just another resolution possibly to consider, and a conversation with Representative Miller, is State Bill, or Senate Bill 493, about removing the ETJ, which, as bad as the current resolution is, this is significantly worse. And put it in perspective, what could it be like here, it's a big swath of land that is south of the Williamson Tract. So Williamson Tract is in the town limits. ETJ is south, closer to Oak Island, and actually butts the intercoastal. And if they want to sell the property, and they'll use county planning, and they could put a 5-story hotel back there or a resort back there, and there's really nothing we could do about it if we lose control of that. That's scary.
So in talking with Representative Miller, in public forums where the COG mayors have all gathered and asked questions, it appears as though losing control of ETJs will be statewide.
Right.
So it's.
And this bill in this form is populations of 50,000 or less are just removed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Anything else, Council?
So there's already 24 parcels that are not in the town. So there's already a patchwork quilt underway.
Correct.
In this neighborhood. And so there are 10 property owners, or Representative Miller is representing 10 additional property owners.
11, I think, isn't it?
It was 11 total, but one of the parcels actually wasn't in our
Right,
jurisdiction.
wasn't in to begin with, yeah.
Okay.
So, and the problem is they're not grouped continuously together.
Right. Because of how they signed on.
Right, exactly.
And the town manager and mayor at that time allowed that to happen.
I mean, so I understand we're trying to say, well, this just creates problems with stormwater servicing accounts, doing whatever we need to do to the taxpayers, but we already have that problem. Like, what do we do today?
Correct.
There's 24 parcels. Are we skipping those when we do service and maintenance out there? I mean, the problem exists today. We're not creating a problem, or Representative Miller's not creating a problem, they're just adding to the problem because the
Correct.
problem's already there.
Correct.
So it just seems like to me there's a different conversation that needs to be addressed, but maybe we're all saying that all those avenues have been exhausted. Is that what we're saying?
I think, well, I won't speak for you, Catherine, go ahead.
No, please.
You'd rather me than you, I get it. I think that it's been allowed to continue without being addressed at all, and this, Catherine and I both met with members of the Oakwood Glen community in a listening session as part of our kind of hopscotching across Oak Island to have listening sessions with all of our neighborhoods, and excuse me. So this was brought to the fore at that session. There were people that wanted to stay within the town. There are people that wanted to leave the town. I just think this is just allowed to continue without being addressed at all. So it's kind of bringing it to light. And I think council, following the administration's recommendation, it's time that we address that. No one should be receiving services with Oak Island tax dollars that they haven't paid for. So if we were, for instance, to send a letter to members of Oakwood Glen homeowners that potentially are receiving services but are in the county, then everyone would get that letter, not just these 11, if that makes sense.
It does.
Is that fair? We done? On to consideration of transitioning from a fire fee to a fire tax.
We haven't
Oh,
taken
I'm
any
sorry.
action.
Do we have a motion for a resolution opposing HB 338?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution opposing HB 338 and direct staff to forward the resolution to the North Carolina General Assembly.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? 4, all opposed? 2.
I'm sorry, I missed the other one.
Before to 2, it has to be 3 to 2.
3-2.
3 to 2, I'm sorry.
Could you tell me who the no?
Kraft.
I missed that. Bill?
Kraft and Martin.
Okay.
I'd like to address that. The vote's already been taken, but I didn't get a chance to talk before the vote was taken.
I'm sorry.
3 years ago, we went to representative with our hat in our hand and asked for $20 million to pay for our sand, and he came through. I don't want to fall on my sword over 11 houses, 11 lots with no houses on them. We're down here, he's up here, he's made his opinion and formed his opinion and took his action from his seat in a higher house. That's why I ask, has any of us asked him what his reasoning is, what his justification is, why he's doing this? If we're suffering, we should be able to tell our representative, this causes us concern and we suffer. I was going to recommend that our town manager or assistant town manager sit down with him, have a cup of coffee and express our concerns before we start writing him letters and telling him, we're upset with you. Next time something comes up, you're justified in being upset with us. I just don't want to start that.
We did.
That's why I asked
exactly
earlier
that.
and I didn't get definitive.
Mayor and I both have spoken with him on the phone. We've also been to his office in Raleigh with Lisa as well and spoken about this. This was not to a particular representative. This is a resolution in general opposing de-annexation activity in general.
Well,
Well, but this resolution says 11 properties included in the de-annexation.
That's right.
So, I mean, yeah, I'm opposed to de-annexation in general. I'm opposed to Williamson Tract being de-annexed or Pine Forest being de-annexed, but we're writing a resolution saying you've already filed your House Bill 338, and now after the fact, we want to tell you we're upset about it.
Well, I would see it slightly differently, closer to the, I suppose, the manager's perspective as she presented it. This is a policy without procedure that at least the public knows anything about. Like, what criteria were in place when this decision was made? We don't know. What opportunity, if any, did we have as a community to file an impact statement? None. So I'm not voting against Representative Miller. He's obviously helped us enormously financially. But this policy, this is bad politics. It's resulting in pain and suffering financially, at least, for communities. I'm looking at Southport now. We're part of it. This needs to be, from my point of view, revised. If you're going to have this kind of policy, okay, what is the procedure? What criteria need to be in place? Here's the rationale for the decision, and here's your opportunity, Oak Island, file an impact statement, because we will be impacted in terms of loss of revenue. None of that occurred. So yes, it's displeasure, but it's not directed at him, right? It's just bad law, bad procedure equals bad result, from our point of view. I get what you're saying. I certainly don't want to bite the hand that feeds us. But
And we need a better line of communication. I haven't been told one thing what his reasoning is. But he has some kind of reason. He has some kind of justification. He's not saying, he didn't wake up one morning and say, let's be mean to Southport, let's be mean to Oak Island. He woke up one morning and he justified his actions in his mind, and no one's told me how he justified it. That's all I'm asking. I'd like to have some answers. And we ought to be communicating with him more. But the vote's been taken. I can move
My
on.
biggest concern is this sets an ugly precedent, that others see how easy it is to de-annex, and what's to keep them from doing so. So I think John's points are well taken. And at least in my next conversation, or in Catherine's and my next conversation, I think these are important points to bring up. But it is not against Representative Miller. It's against, because it's happening in communities across the state. It's more against the policy and the action. But
Once you learn the answer as to why he felt led to do that, and justified in doing that, let us know, 'cause I'm still in the dark.
He did not provide that to me.
Communication, yeah. Want me to call him?
Again, this is a bill that still has a long way to go. So I think the voice of Oak Island needs to be heard to all of the legislators who may have this in front of them to vote. It is not about one representative in any way.
okay. Chief Price?
Yes. I should have just sat up front. It would have been a lot less walking tonight. In my annual report last month, I gave some hints about wanting to make a conversion of funding, create a more efficient funding source for the fire department, switching from fire fees to fire tax. So I'm placing it before you, and I'm not asking for a vote tonight. I'm not asking for a decision. What I want to do is get it in front of you so y'all can discuss it. We can have some conversations, and then we'll get deep in the weeds once we get into the later part of April in the budget meetings, because that'll be the more appropriate time to get in the weeds. I just need to get it in front of you, and let's start those conversations. One thing I want to make sure of that people understand, this is not an additional tax. You know, people hear that word tax, they're like, oh, just more taxes. This is not an additional tax. This is a alternative funding stream for the fire department service. It's a funding stream that is predictable, it's more concise, it provides the ability to forecast. It provides room for expansions of services. It provides relief to the general fund contribution. It also enhances your transparency, and it provides equality of cost based on value and not on volume of parcels or houses. Just a reminder what fire fees are. They're based on property size, heated square footage, not tax value. They are not tax deductible. The fire fee schedule has reached a ceiling. There's no additional room for growth. The only growth that we have are the houses that are built, and contrary to a lot of belief, we don't have a tremendous amount of building going on in Oak Island. There's a lot around us, but ours isn't a tremendous amount. It has reached a point of diminishing returns and is an adequate source of funding. We are receiving 100% of the available fire fees. There's no more room in there. Fire tax is based on the tax value. It is deductible. It allows more accurate, consistent revenue assumptions. It provides clear projections, efficient budgeting, adequate funding source, and it is more equality in the funding also. Just to give you an idea, our fire fees in 2023, the 24 and then 25 fire fees, you can see there's not a tremendous amount of increase in the 3 years. 3%, 2%, stuff like that, because that is based on, and I'll show you on this slide, 2% of a fee increase, that's a percent, not cents. It generates about $56,000, whereas if you're talking about fire tax with your ad valorem taxes, it generates about $200,000. So there's a big difference when you start talking about that. So this is the process that I suggest that we have. It's a 3-step process. This is my objectives. We determine what the current rate of the fire tax would be as it stands today. We'll utilize that number to begin the 25-26 budget process, which we are in the middle of, and we will be meeting later this month about, and then set the tax rate based upon the budget meetings for the 25-26 budget year. I want to make a couple of other things clear as how this funding change. Some residents may pay a little bit less, some may pay a little bit more. It is dependent upon the house size in relation to the property value. It's also the same with businesses. It's dependent on the square footage versus the value. So budget considerations, our total fire budget, 4.8, 2.7 provided fire fee revenues. That's the difference that the town contributed. I put a graph in here just to show you that what our budget's worth for a 5-year running trend, and then the orange line shows the fire fees, the green line shows what the general fund contributed to it. Revenue mathematics, so if we took what the fire fee revenues are at the 98% collection rate and the general fund contribution, which totals what our budget is, that equates to 7.5 cents. So to what we're doing for business today, we would need a tax rate, or basically, we talked about neutral and all those other words, but the tax rate would need to be 7.5 cents for the fire tax. Step 2, we've established that 7.5 cents, so that's our starting point. And then our step 3 is in the budget negotiations that we talk about, whether we get more, whether we maintain, whether we cut, whatever, how that is. The tax rate is based upon the budget considerations. Any questions?
Chief, for renters, apartments, Pine Forest, how are they assessed, a fire fee or a fire tax?
So it's the same way as property taxes. I believe it's built into their rent type thing. Is when you're charged rent, all your back-end fees and stuff are accommodated in that. Isn't that right?
Oh, for the
Pine Forest, how does that affect them?
Yeah, the apartments in Pine Forest, are they charged a fire fee? How would they charge a fire fee?
So it's attached to the owner of the property, not the renters.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The number in our agenda is different than the number that was on your chart.
It is. And we'll talk about that when we get deep in the weeds and on the 24th. Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Chief Price?
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Catherine, you need this?
Yeah. Okay.
Last, under new business is consideration of a resolution for refinancing our wastewater bonds.
So we have an opportunity, one of our 4 existing wastewater bonds is ripe for refinancing, and I've been speaking with our FA and bond counsel and Helen Brandt as well, our new finance director, going through the numbers and some of the options. It is quite possible, and the initial numbers were that we would save potentially $150,000 a year to proceed with this refinancing opportunity. The market is considerably in flux at the moment, so we will be proceeding with great caution through this process. We'll have outside bond counsel representatives, and we must go through the state's LGC, the Local Government Commission. They're monitoring this, and they have the final approval on whether towns can go forward and incur additional debt. But based on all of our initial analysis, this is well worth the effort to go through this process. And what you have before you tonight is just the letter of intent to start the process and give us the authority to continue during this process up until the LGC meeting in May, And then, even then, we will be coming back to you for final approval, and again, be monitoring the current market situations from now until then to make sure this still makes sense for us. But even worst-case scenario, we're looking at $100,000 savings a year.
But you won't be able to tie in a bond rate for a month or so?
That's correct. It might even be better.
And the bottom line is no additional cost to our taxpayers, no matter how it plays out.
That is net after we pay bond counsel and FA fees and everything.
And it doesn't extend the period of time of the bond, correct?
That's
It still has
correct.
the same
Yep.
terminal date.
Still end at 2036.
No-brainer.
Win-win.
Cost savings.
Yeah,
Right?
it's a no-brainer.
The only question is the magnitude of the win. And, well, the way things are going in financial markets, who knows? But, you know, so if not 150, it's 100 times the duration of the bond, which is set to 34,
36.
36.
So the total estimate right now is $134,000 a year. Until 2036, we'd be looking at a $1.4 million savings.
I don't think we need to think very long on that one.
No.
Is it the other bond that ends in 2034? Does the second one end earlier?
The next one that might be ripe for refunding is the 2017 issuance. The two state bonds with the low interest rate that we would not be looking to refinance, those will end in 2030. So that's the one we're thinking of. The one we're proposing right now is the 2015 bond that ends in 2036. And the other one is the 2017 bond that also ends in 2036.
Okay.
And that one we'll be watching closely for maybe next year's savings potential.
None of these are being paid now out of the general fund. They're being paid out of the sewer assessment.
That is, well, they're being paid out of the sewer fund, not the sewer assessment fee, but out of direct sewer cost.
Right. Yeah, they got to be paid with user-based fees.
User fees, that's correct. No general funds whatsoever. But again, it's a savings.
Win-win.
Any other questions, council?
She doesn't need a motion, does she?
Do we have a motion?
Sure. I make a motion to approve the resolution of the Town Council of Oak Island, North Carolina, directing the application to the Local Government Commission for approval of the town's enterprise system revenue refunding bonds, Series 2025, requesting the Local Government Commission approval of the 2025 bonds and certain related materials as presented.
Second.
It's unanimous. At this time, we will go to closed session. And, Lisa, do you want to?
Yes, listed on the agenda, it would be a motion to prevent disclosure of information that is not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the general statutes, to consult with the town attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege, and to discuss potential land acquisition pursuant to NCGS 143, 318, 11, A1, 3, and 5.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? And we'll be back. We are back from closed session. No action was taken. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? And we are adjourned.
Yeah, I am. I'm in favor, yeah.